Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 101 of the podcast. Once again, like episode 3, if anybody remembers that far back, doing kind of a different interview today, having my sister on, Courtney von Wackerbarth, but we're switching roles and she's interviewing me. After the first 100 episodes have been released, she wanted to ask me a couple questions and see how I've dealt with it and ask me things like, what was my favorite episode? What was the most difficult part? What surprised me? Those type of things, and it was really fun. It was a really fun exercise to do, and really forced me to bring a lot of honest conversations that I've just been having in my own head with myself out into the public. And it's a lot easier to rationalize and to justify to yourself. And when you're forced to do it to somebody else, you really have to realize where your blind spots lie and where certain things need better articulation. Sometimes stuff makes sense to you, but you just haven't put in the work to be able to bring it to the world, and that's okay. But I think an exercise like this really highlights where those things are. So it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. It was a great idea. It was Courtney's idea to do it all the way back on the 3rd episode, and it was her idea to do it again here. And hopefully we keep doing this again and again throughout this journey. And I just have a lot of fun with it. So I hope you guys enjoy it as well. What I've been up to, I guess the last you guys would have heard would be the intro for episode 100 with my dad, and that was an awesome experience. I want to just throw a big shout out to everybody. That was, the most downloaded episode we've had. You guys have been really killing it. The support that I've been getting, it really means a lot to me. I try not to watch the download numbers too much, but it's really tough, especially when you have a great episode like that. It's hard not to just, click back, and I try, only look a couple times a day and not obsess over it. But Ingo was quite proud. I think he wouldn't have had it any other way, but he wanted to have the record of the most downloads on the first day or whatever. And he accomplished it. And I hope he enjoyed it. I don't know, me and him haven't talked too much about the podcast since we did it, but it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun in that moment, and I just am thankful that we got to do it and that you guys got to enjoy it with me. And just all the people that texted me, I got a call from my buddy Cody. He said he had to pull over on the side of the road because he was laughing so hard at some of the stories. The Dana backing into Brad's car story was a hit. Lots of people love that one. Lots of people, love the stories about my mom and they want to hear from her. So, you know what? I've tried my best. If you guys want to hear my mom on here, you got to bug her about it. She's got lots of stories too, and it was fun to just have the freedom just to kind of kick back with one of my best friends in the whole world, my dad, and bullshit like that. So, in the intro to that and why it was released a day later, I was talking to you guys. I don't know if you heard that about my. I was having some issues with my stomach. I think at that point, I had. Spent only one day. I spent that whole Sunday in the hospital doing lots of tests, and they weren't really able to figure out. I mean, that fucking doctor. He just said, it's alcoholic gastritis. That's what this is, and take some Pepto-Bismol and sent me home. And I was on Toradol at the time, so I was on a really heavy painkiller, so I was fine that night. But then the next day, when I did that intro for the podcast and released it there, or released it the next day, I guess I packed up. I don't know why I did this. I packed up, still in pain, still barely being able to walk around, hunched over, and drove all the way to Grand Prairie with my dog because I got my dog back. She was staying with Alyssa in the city for the first couple of days, but wanted to bring her back. So I was leaving the only support systems I had, which was in Edmonton, and Courtney and Liam were taking great care of me. Drove all the way out to my place in GP to be alone with no friends, nobody to go get me, medicine if I needed it. This was very stupid in retrospect. So I get home, and sitting in the truck driving all day was not fun, and it didn't feel great. And when I got home, it kind of got worse, and I think I got in my own head, and it felt like the pain was moving, and it was kind of centralizing to the lower right side of my body where I know the appendix is. And I wasn't sure if I was in my own head about it, but it was not feeling good. Like, it wasn't any more painful. Still, the Saturday night that I told you guys about, that was still the worst night of it, but I was worried, and I was just getting in my head. I was freaking the fuck out. I was have been dealing with it at that point. That was Monday. Yeah, that would have been Monday. So I'd been dealing with it Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. This is the 4th day of this, and it hadn't gotten better. We'd done all these tests, and nobody could tell me nothing. And now it was starting to move, and it felt different. And I just, yeah, wasn't pretty on my reactions. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I was definitely freaking out a bit, but a lot of times with, if it is a stomach issue, I still didn't know at that time what it was, but I'm fairly certain it's something to do with my guts. But a lot of times stress can be on that. And I know I was stressing myself out, freaking out. Once again, called our family doctors, and she was amazing. I was crying. I was freaking out. And she was just, you could tell she had done it for a lot of years because she knew exactly what to say to calm me down. But I think she could also tell that I'm the type of guy I need to hear honest feedback of like, what do you think this is? Like what, like, let's run this by together. I hate talking to doctors and them just giving you pieces of information because you're not smart enough to follow along. It's like, fuck you, buddy. You know, like I have this crazy ego and everybody knows it, but like I would, I think I could be a doctor if I would have applied myself and I would have went to med school. I have no doubt in my mind I could be an amazing doctor, right? And that is a crazy thing to say, I'm sure, for a lot of people. I'm sure there's doctors listening that are going, what the fuck do you talk about, buddy? Like, and I totally understand that, but because of that, there's nothing I can do about it. I really struggle. And that was so nice that night to, not only was she helping calm me down, but she was actually listening to me. And I was, very, what would be the word? Hysterical maybe about it, but like it helped so much and I felt a lot better. And she just told me, you know what, you're going to be fine. Nothing's going to happen to you tonight. Go right 7 a.m. Go to the emergent GP. And, I was up all night with my stomach, couldn't really get much sleep. So I ended up just trying to sleep in a bit more and ended up not going in until about 9 o'clock. And it was busy there, but it was so much nicer. I don't know what it was in GPI. I was so disheartened by that trip in St. Albert to the hospital and just having every nurse and every doctor just give me the biggest death glare as soon as I said I was unvaccinated. And as soon as it came out that I threw up, because that Saturday night, it was so bad. The pain was so bad. It made me nauseous and I puked, but I knew it wasn't a symptom. I knew it was just because of the pain. Like, it wasn't vomiting. I wasn't nauseous, but everybody just locked in on that. Everyone in St. Albert just thought it's COVID. It's COVID. It's COVID. And I'm like, it's not. They're like, you threw up. Throw up is a symptom of COVID. That's why I felt like I wasn't being listened to, and I was so angry. So I did a COVID test on that Sunday. I didn't get the results till yesterday, like midway through the day. And I'm like, if you guys were so sure and we're doing all these tests and you didn't know, so. That was the other thing that my family doctor said, like, do you have rapid tests? I said, yeah, I got them here. Like, I could take some. She's like, well, just, just take some tests. So I did 2 rapid tests just to be damn sure, because I was like, if they're so sure it's COVID, I'd rather just know right now. Obviously it wasn't COVID. I knew that the whole time. Fucking stupid, but whatever. But that's what I'm saying. So I was just really disheartened about that whole trip. That 9 hours I spent in the hospital of just being treated like a fucking piece of shit was not very fun. So I really didn't want to go back. But I made a few changes to my tactics because that's the thing. Like I was so nice to everybody in St. Albert, to every nurse, every doctor. I just was killing with kindness of just trying to be my true self, of just my sharing love and compassion and, being nice to people in the waiting room. That's just what I was trying to do. But I was like, well, that didn't work last time. So this time I dressed a little different. I wore my U of A hoodie so they couldn't just, label me into some crazy person. At least they'd know I had some sort of degree. I don't know. I was desperate at this time. And I don't know if it was the hoodie I wore or just a different day, different hospital, small town, maybe more my feel, but I got treated so much better. They got me in right away. The doctor listened a lot better. We did a lot more tests. They ended up doing a CT scan, more blood work. There were some concerns there. They thought maybe it was a kidney stone. We did everything we could just through the kitchen sink at it, which felt at least half decent. At least we're trying. We knocked some scary things off the list. But at the end of the day, they couldn't figure it out. They have no idea what is going on. And that was tough to see. And I'm a little bit, miffed at that, just because all I want right now is answers and just to feel better about it. But that was not to be had. So they just gave me a prescription for T3s, which I went and filled and will never take. Like, obviously not. I haven't even taken Tylenol this whole time because I know how bad all painkillers are. If you don't really need them, you shouldn't really be taking anything. The least things you can do to mess with your body chemistry, the better. People don't want you to realize that. But if you do your research and look into things, like our understanding of the body and how these things affect our body are so beginner. We're just on the precipice of realizing how much we don't know with a lot of this stuff. So if you're better off not taking stuff. And I know that the whole medical says, take this, because it's all suppressant. But I didn't want to suppress things. I want to figure out what's going on. If something's going to hurt somewhere, I want to feel it. If something's going to move, something's going to change, I want to be able to feel it. So I haven't taken shit, But anyway, that's what I've been dealing with. So that was Tuesday. I spent another full day pretty much at the hospital, and then Wednesday just kind of relaxed at home. Try not to do too much. watched the hockey game, just tried to relax on the couch. Was dealing with some bullshit that night. Then, same thing Thursday. Again, my stomach felt maybe a little bit better, but not 100%. I was able to do a decent sized walk with the dog, and that was some good exercise, and went and got lunch and stuff. So I was able to get a little bit more out of the house. And was honestly just so busy dealing with something else that whole day. Thursday was a nightmare of a day. Was just fielding all day, all calls. I don't want to talk about what it was that happened, at least not at this time, probably not ever, but just dealing with some bullshit that, I can promise you guys I did nothing wrong and just kind of got sucked into something I didn't want to get sucked into, and was just feeling calls all day with it and stuff. So I was feeling, I was trying to think maybe I felt a little bit better on Thursday, but I was so pressured up with all this other stuff and all this other stress, and knowing that stress is a big cause of stomach issues. I didn't really know how I was doing, but now today, Friday, feeling a little bit better. Was able to do some yoga and a light run today, which felt good. Still didn't feel great on my stomach. My stomach still doesn't feel great as we're talking right now, but it's not debilitating. It's gone from really painful to more just really uncomfortable, and I can deal with uncomfortable. And I'm hoping that positive outlook and just trying to de-stress myself and not focus on it is going to help me get better. And that's kind of where that's all that's sitting. But it sure was highlighting my concerns about the healthcare system. Was sure highlighted with this most recent journey, right? And again, like I said, in St. Albert, even though that was a rough experience, amazing people, right? Like just the nurses and the doctors. Other than that one doctor that talked to me, he seemed like he couldn't give less of a fuck. Like he wanted to get the fuck out of there. He's just like, yeah, no, you drank. It's caused by drinking. Get the fuck out of here. Other than him, everybody was just amazing. And same thing at GP, like just the nicest nurses, willing to do everything for everybody. Like, some of the patients there were not very nice to them, and they just responded with even more kindness, and it just filled my heart. I loved, as much as it sucks to sit at the hospital, I hate the hospital. I will never go there unless I'm forced. But it just sure was a positive place to watch everybody, just after all the compassion fatigue everyone must be feeling for them, still to be able to bring themselves to be that good to people was awesome. I love to see it. And also this process was, and I've talked a lot on here about, trauma and like triggers being a good thing after a while. Once you've done a lot of work on yourself, you start to see the times that make you angry, right? Like, I can't even talk about. Yeah, there's things on like that thing I was dealing with on Thursday. There were some things said, and I was so proud of myself on Thursday of just like how certain things that would have hurt me a long time ago just have absolutely no bearing anymore, because I've talked about them on the podcast and found a lot of love for myself about some of these things. So they just didn't hurt, like nothing, like didn't make me angry. Like things that would have triggered me for sure, like 10 years ago was water off my back. And I was very proud of myself for that. But then, that's how the world works. As soon as you give yourself pride for that, it smacks you in the ass with something else that you need to deal with, right? But that's what I'm talking about, is it's a gift. And I was triggered. Going through this latest little health journey has really highlighted something for myself and where a lot of my trauma comes from. And I've always struggled with pain. I never liked pain. I try to stay away from it if I can. I don't like hurting myself. I'm a bit of a hypochondriac with some of this stuff too. And I understand that. And I think it was because I would never be listened to as a kid when I felt sick or hurt or you're fine, right? Nobody listened to me. And I hated that so much that I feel like I developed some sort of complex where I get so angry when people laugh at my pain or laugh at my circumstances when there's nothing I can do about it. And it's really scaring me or hurting me, or I'm in a bad place because of it. I just see red. One of the best examples of it is, just talking with my parents, and that's what it goes back to all the time is, my parents, and they love me so much, but they know that I'm like this and that, and I know it too. And I don't need to be told that. I know I freak myself out, and I'm a bit of a baby with pain and that, but also I know when something isn't right. And when people don't listen to me, does it just grind my gears, right? But the ultimate expression of this was I was on the phone with one of my good buddies, talking about, it was again on Thursday, I was dealing with all this stuff of, just trying to talk to people about it and that. And just at one point he just said like, the never ending bellyache or whatever, and just made a joke at me. Right. And this is the thing, cause I joke about everything. Like it's so silly when I do get triggered, because I'm always going for the joke. I'm always making jokes. And then people will just say one thing to me that's offside for it just triggers my thing. And I get super angry. And I felt as soon as he said that, the whole conversation, I would just want to be off the phone. I was livid mad. I was like, fuck you. Like I don't, I don't like this. I don't like those jokes. Like, oh, and I was such a big baby and I reacted so much and I just couldn't wait to get off the phone with him. Right. And he's one of my best fucking friends. I love him to death. Right. And to know this, but just to realize that. And then when I sat with it after the fact, I was like, man, that sure is you were triggered there. That's not how you wanted to act. Right. Like you just wasted a good phone call with a friend, just with your anger. And I had to sit with it, and I was doing a lot of thinking on it because I already knew that was one of my traumas of not being listened to. But it's especially around pain and injury, and that's why I hate getting sick because I go, oh no, if this gets worse, nobody's going to listen to me. Everyone's going to think I'm being a baby. I'm going to be crying wolf again. No one's going to listen to me. What if I die? And I spiral on that side of it. And the other thing is, for the last 4 years, I've had my I guess my ex-girlfriend Alyssa. She was just always there for me and supported me so much in that. Like it probably was too much to the other side where gave into all my crying and just, with so much unconditional love that regardless, I never had to deal with that for 4 years of this feeling of not being taken seriously because I always had that person in my corner that listened to me and would never do exactly what I just kind of laid out of what I hate, would never do that, would never hope to do that. And honestly, probably needed to do that a bit more because it allowed, just the worst parts of my nature. But like I said, I'm aware of it. So I'm always catching myself for it. So I don't need other people to do it the entire time. That's probably why I didn't go into the hospital that night on Saturday because I just know I can't because what if it turns out to be nothing? Then that's just more ammunition. Everyone's, story about me that I'm this, whatever it is of all that trauma that goes back to childhood, and clearly I need to do a lot of work on it. But it's just an interesting example. I feel like on the podcast, I talk about that a lot about this, your triggers can be opportunities, right? Like there's a kind of silly thing that I say all the time, but this is a good example of it. I can show you guys of like, I recognize in that moment, that is not something I wanted to be reacting like. That's not the Nick I want to be. And it's just interesting. And I feel like the next step now is to try and find love for that part of myself so that it can become one of those things that's just water off my back when people make jokes like that. And it's nothing. Again, that's one of those things I'm sure, just like every other trauma I've done this process with, there's a whole host of different manifestations where this trauma is holding you back in your life and you won't know until you can solve it how much better it's going to make you. But like my overweight issues, my daddy issues of people saying, you were given everything you want, like those things just triggered me so much. And when I found, love for those things and just, as was able to work through them, now they don't hold that weight. And my life got infinitely better when I worked on those big ones. And this is just another one of those ones. And I'm just excited. I still clearly have not worked through it. And it's going to take a lot more time. And I'm going to, do some specific meditations where I think on that and really try and go back to it and understand it more so that I can get to that place. But it was just an interesting place to be of working through it so in the moment, of still being that angry, because I feel like so many of those other traumas were so much better understood than this one. And I feel like I got a decent handle on it, but it's just not fully there yet where I can start to do the real work to move past it. I think I understand it now, which is the first step, but I just need to definitely some more work to go on it. So my stomach's been bugging me and I haven't been able to do much, and I've been trying to just not stress out because I had this whole trip. I was going to go to the home opener with my buddy Chase on Wednesday. I was going to go down to Calgary this weekend. I was supposed to be, my other best bud Fraser's up writing a test. I hope I can say that anyway. Fraser's not in Canada. He's not writing a test. And we're supposed to go, see him and see a couple buddies from Calgary, and it was going to be really good. Maybe even get some podcasts done down there. And to have to lose that to this stomach thing really is bugging me, and I'm struggling with that. And I've been struggling with a lot since October 1st of just this feeling of, I guess up to that hockey game when my guts kind of went south, I was really feeling like I was struggling because I felt like I wasn't doing enough. I had this whole plan in my head of like, I'm going to work 8-hour days on the podcast. As soon as October 1st comes, like I'm going to be structured and have all this stuff in place and really work through, because I know all these things I have to do, but it's so overwhelming to know you have a million things you need to do, and not be able to bring yourself to jump into any of them because they're so overwhelming. Anyway, but for that first week or so, I was so fucking happy, guys. I can't even tell you. Like, even that first Friday, I don't know if I've talked about this yet on the podcast. Maybe I have. But just that freedom, that exactly what I was missing of just every time somebody suggested, getting on depression meds or any of those things, I just kept imagining this feeling of when I can finally quit my job and just have that freedom back of nobody telling me what to do. I am free. Oh, it almost makes me like emotional. Like I could tear up right now. Like just how amazing that was. And that really balanced out. So I was feeling a lot of stress over you're not doing enough. But just that feeling of freedom was so amazing that I didn't even care. I was just like, you know what? This is so worth it to me. I know I need to be doing a million things right now, but I'm just enjoying this freedom, and I think that's a great thing to do. And I think then when my stomach went sideways here, and I've been dealing with that for the enjoyment kind of went away a little bit. Now those feelings of you're not doing enough. What are you like? Why are you wasting your time? You have all this stuff you need to do. You're not jumping on it. You have no sponsors yet. You have no, and I'm working on a couple sponsors in the background, and that like you haven't brought on any more employees. You haven't figured out in-person video yet. You haven't got a website. You haven't done this. You haven't done that. You haven't streamed. And streaming is so tempting but so stressful, and I have no idea how to start. And I just want somebody to come over to my house, sit with me at my computer, and just get my first stream going. Just show me the basics so that I can just follow it and I can repeat it, and I'll get better from then. I just need to get the start, and also I just need to watch a fucking YouTube video, do it myself, and stop being a pussy. But anyway, those feelings, I've been really struggling with that, because now I don't have that, I'm just enjoying my freedom part of it, right? Like that I had in that first week. Now I've been kind of just, not getting much done. So today is my first day of, I got a little bit of a workout in, took the dog for a long walk, did a cold shower, did a meditation. I'm doing this, getting this podcast ready to set up. I might even just put this one out Friday, like right as soon as I finish recording this intro. I'm just going to throw it right up. Who cares? It's 3:00 on a Friday. This is the freedom I have to do. I can put up episodes whenever. I don't need to follow no schedule, which is also kind of tapping back into that freedom thing. It feels cool. Getting episodes ready, getting Monday's episode ready, starting to do that stuff, work on maybe even trying to get a couple sponsors for Monday's episode so that I can get that monkey off my back. And it's just a lot of things that are working on. But that's kind of the battle I'm going through right now, is just this tug of war between enjoying my freedom and just like, basking in this glow of, like don't have to be at work on Monday. I don't have, all the stress of what's coming, all the COVID mandates. Oh my good God. I just thank my lucky stars I got out at that moment. Like that is just stressful to the nines of if I would have had to force people into something. I'm so happy to be away from it. And I can't tell you, I can't even explain to you guys what this feeling is like. But if there's some way you can apply it to yourself, if you think that this feeling is out there for you, if you make one change in your life, like all I got to do is fucking take it. Like, yeah, it might be scary, but life figures itself out. Yeah, it's scary. Whatever. We'll figure it out. Fuck. Come on, join me. Make the leap. Come be crazy. Crazy's fun sometimes. Fuck. Oh my God. Yeah. So that's kind of what I've been up to the last couple of days. Big dub for the Oilers. So fun to watch them play again. I love the team. The squad looks good. Seeing Hyman out there, like what that does to our top six and the flexibility it gives our forward core. Watching the newbies in the back end. Smith looks fucking dialed. Let's go. Oh, I'm fucking psyched. Let's go. So lots of Oiler hockey in my future here. Lots of good fight. Kind of a couple down weekends in a row of MMA. We had that boxing fight last week that was just incredible. Oh, there's another Canelo's fighting soon. I don't know if that's this weekend. Maybe it's next weekend. Anyway, got that coming up. Kind of not a great card tomorrow. Aspen Ladd versus Norman Dumont, I think. And there's a couple decent fights on there. Like, I don't think there's, other than the main event, I don't think there's a ranked fighter on the card, which is tough for casuals because like I see a bunch of names on like Jordan Wright's fighting, I think. Excited about him. There's a couple other guys that I think Landwehr's fighting. Like a couple names that I, as like a really hardcore fan, I'm excited to see, but like I cannot blame anybody for skipping this card this weekend. This one's kind of a dud, but then there's some fucking bangers coming. So if you're, a somewhat MMA fan and you're looking to me for, which ones to watch and which ones don't to watch, maybe skip this weekend. If you don't want to, if you're diehard, watch it. I'm going to watch it. I watch everyone, but I don't care. But save yourself for the next couple weekends because there is some absolute cracker cards coming and I cannot wait for it. So I'm excited about that. I'll have to reschedule the trip down to Calgary, I guess, and do some podcasts there. I really need to do a trip to Slave Lake and do a bunch of podcasts with the old crew there. Do more online ones, get back to Edmonton, do more. I think I already mentioned this, but I got a couple in the can. One with my friend Emma Russell. She's a nurse and a musician. She's amazing, and I can't wait for you guys to hear that episode. That was a fun catch up. And then probably after that one will be the second episode with Cody Twin, which, like I said, if you guys enjoy this episode and you want to go back for another one, download episode number 30 with Cody Twin. It's the best episode I've done so far, and the second one was if not as good, like very close. Like it hit some pretty high highs. Like I'm really, really excited to get that one out to you guys. So a couple good ones coming, and then just doing some planning. And here's the thing, like what's becoming more and more apparent to me is like, I do okay structuring myself. Like I can force myself into it, but it takes a lot out of me to be really structured. And that's what I'm finding. Like with work, I could work within a work structure really well because it provided the structure. And I'm just like, I'm an artist. And this is so funny to say, like, because I'm such a, a business guy. I was always brought up in that, like, I'm going to be in the business world, and I'm so not. I'm an artist. Like what I need more than anything with this podcast is just like an assistant or like a drill sergeant to come here and just structure of just like, I can lay out exactly what I need to get done. Just force me, like come up with some sort of schedule plan, like hold my feet to the fire, give me accountability, right? Like that's all I need right now to really kick me up to the next level. And it's funny to notice that in yourself and to I don't know. It's just a funny thing that I think I noticed, but I think it's a really important thing because I think it's really a lot of who I am and yeah, it's just interesting to me. I don't know if it'll be interesting to anybody else, but it's interesting to me. And that's what I'm following with this podcast because at least so far, all of this has just been interesting to me. And it's at least, it's been landing with some people and more people are going to see it and it's going to land with more people. Just got to reach them. So, talking about reaching out to people, if you guys could do those same things I always ask, follow social medias, give me a subscription on my YouTube page. That would really help. Liking the stuff, dropping comments, sharing, that all really helps. Subscribing on whatever app you listen to, if it's Spotify or Apple, please subscribe. That's a huge thing as well. Subscriptions go a long way. What else? If you know any businesses that you think would be a good fit for the business consulting, the VDC business consulting venture I'm starting up, please send them my way. We can either do it for free, on the podcast like this, it'd be a separate podcast, the Von Dubcast Business Consulting Podcast, where you get the same offering I would do in private for a fee, but live and recorded, and then it acts as an advertisement for your company, an advertisement for my business consulting skills, and it and it kind of helps everybody out, and it's free at that point. Or we can do the same thing behind closed doors and have the same types of conversations, but maybe sometimes something's proprietary, but or you just it's too early to talk about in a public forum, or to just sometimes industries you can't. It's too tight hole to really be talked about publicly, but. Yeah, if you know anybody that'd be interested on that, if you know anybody that you think would be a good, interesting sponsor, whether it's just a local company in Slave Lake or Edmonton or Calgary, somewhere local around that you think would be good to bring on, or somebody bigger, if you have any guest ideas, please send them my way. Always looking for more people to get onto the podcast. And yeah, if you know any streaming, Twitch, aficionados, or experts that you could push my way to help give me that boost to get me started streaming, because I'm so excited to do it. I have a big blocker on it. I don't know what it is, guys. And I just want to be honest with you guys. Like I don't know, whatever it is, it's I'm really battling against it, but I'm so excited just to get past that first initial hump and dive into that too. Cause I think that I'm going to really enjoy that. And I really miss video games right now. I feel like there's so many video games I want to play, like Far Cry's out and all these things, the redone Skyward Sword on the Switch. And there's so many games, but I've been for the last 5 months, I haven't played a video game really, like other than just playing some League, because I'm trying to save it for streaming, and I'm not enjoying these things I should, because I'm not, this is so silly. I think I might even just download a video game tonight just to start playing, because maybe I just got to get back into video games. That will kick me into streaming. I don't know. Anyway, I've been talking for damn near 30 minutes here, so great episode. Like I said, it's a cool one with my sister. Flip the script. I get interviewed. Pretty raw, I tried to be really honest in this, and some of those answers are probably maybe hard to understand because it was hard for me to even put them to words, and I probably didn't do as good a job as I'd like to, but you know what? I think it's a really good insight, and I'm really excited maybe more just for myself of having this documented, so in the future, so in 10 years I can look back and really see where I was and what I was struggling with at this time, and I'm excited for that. So yeah, I will see you guys in the outro, and then I'll see you guys on Monday's episode. All right, bye. All right. Well, thank you for being here again, Courtney, with a great idea to interview me again, like episode 3.
Yeah, no problem. I'm happy to do it.
Happy to do it. Maybe try and just get a little closer to the mic. I'm just hearing you in the mic is a little bit.
I feel like I'm right on top of
but now I can hear. But now I can hear you good. I can also turn you up a little bit, but no, I'll keep an eye on it. But
okay.
Yeah, no, that was such a great idea. I actually did a kind of an interview thing for the guy that's been helping with the podcast. And it was so much fun to kind of get on the other side of the mic and have people ask me questions again. I was really disappointed. I was like, man, it's sad that that's not going to see the light of day. People won't be able to hear this. Then like the next day that you came up with the idea to do it again for the 100 episodes to kind of ask me a couple questions. I love that idea. I'm so happy you came up with it.
Yeah, no, I think I was listening to your last solo podcast on my drive down to Calgary. And I was just thinking about all of the transitions and all of the things that have been going on lately. And that not only is this a way for me to support you on some of the stuff that you're working through, but also it's just interesting as well. And for like, sometimes we don't always recognize how far things have come. Yeah. Until we're forced to reflect on it.
I'm very bad at that myself too.
Yeah. I thought that this would be a good idea.
Oh, it's a great idea.
Even just for you to look back on when you're on episode 500.
Yeah, exactly. Or 1,000 or 2,000.
Exactly.
Isn't that exciting thoughts, eh?
Yeah, so I got lots of questions written down here, and then we'll just see how many we get through, I suppose.
Sounds good. I'm excited.
So, if you had to sum up the first 100 episodes in 3 words, what would you say?
That's a good question. 3 words, eh? I feel like I'm thinking of the feelings and then trying to find a word that sums them up. Like I'm trying to find a word that will accurately describe how surprising it's been of like the amount of work. Like I think I went into it thinking I had a better handle on it and then that it wouldn't be as much work as it was. So I think like I'm trying to find a word like surprising,
overwhelming.
I guess. Overwhelming, maybe.
Yeah,
that might be a good word. It's like almost like a positive overwhelming. I'd say that. Yeah, that's a good word. Overwhelming. Like passionate because it has been just it's such a passion project that's probably one of the words I would use is passionate, overwhelming, and eye opening maybe. Maybe eye opening. Yeah. I'd say that. I already forgot which 3 words I just picked, but whatever I just said, I stand by it.
Overwhelming, passionate, and eye-opening.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, eye-opening is kind of 2 words, but I'm going to count it.
I'll take it.
I'm going to count it.
And so then overall, how are you feeling? Like if you had to sum up 100 episodes, where you're at now?
I am proud of it. And it's a funny thing because there's a lot of pride there for sure, but also I have a hard time because I can see what I want it to be in the future. And a lot of the time, they say comparison is the thief of joy. And a lot of times people think of that as, comparing yourself with others. And it's not even really that. What I'm struggling with the most is comparing myself with what I did with what I know I'm capable of. And I feel like that's tough because I know that that's just on me to do more, but I think I did everything I could given my mental health capabilities of like the capacity I had, giving everything else I had. And now I'm excited to kind of free up more space for me to put my mental health first so that I have more capacity to put towards this show. You know what I mean? Like I'm so proud of what we did given the constraints, but I just see so much more it could be. And I'm trying to keep myself in that mindset of just celebrating what was done instead of picking on what could have been done better or what could have been done differently.
Nice.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of where I'm at.
Excellent. Okay. So then 2 questions, and they might be the same answer. Who was your favorite guest out of 100 episodes, and what is the interview you're most proud of?
I think my favorite guests would have to be the Coen brothers, who I think you're probably the only person in the world that got to share the specialness of that episode with me because you're the one that showed me those books and showed me those authors, and just we both are really big fans of them. But that was just such a cool experience to be able to ask all those questions I've always dreamed of, and it was kind of it was nice to be specific to that one, but it was kind of I got to live my dream because not that my dream was interviewing them specifically, but my dream was to be able to have people of their caliber that I love that much, that have that much passion towards, and be able to ask those questions, right? Like I always kind of envisioned it, like eventually having like J.K. Rowling on and asking like all our really deep Harry Potter questions that me and you ask each other all the time and trying to see what that is. But I feel like that was, to me, that was almost the same level, and that's what that felt like. And I'd say those would probably be my favorite guests. But the one I was most proud of probably was that first interview with Cody Twin. That one, I think, probably the biggest piece that makes me most proud of it was the response that it got, and how many people reached out and said like, hey, that really impacted me and I really got a lot out of that. And I'm really proud of that, because I knew going into it that I wanted to eventually get to the point where I was hopefully impacting people and making a dent, kind of like actually not just, oh, that was entertaining, I listened to that for the 3 hours that it was, and you kind of forget about it after that, but something that sticks with people and they take with them for the rest of their journey. That was something I was really excited to do. And I didn't know if that would be within the first 100 episodes. I didn't know if that was going to be something that was going to come with time. If maybe when I had a couple of years under my belt, I would start having episodes like that. So to have that, relatively early on in the journey, like 30 episodes, it depends, that's all relative early. I think some people would see 30 episodes into a podcast is not really early, because most podcasts don't make it past 2 or 3 episodes. But it really filled me up with confidence again of I am meant to do this, and given the right guest, and if I'm in the right mind space, and I'm doing the right kind of research and making sure I'm facilitating the right type of interview, it can be that kind of specialness. And I think that was a lot to do with the guest. I think that was probably more so to do with Cody than it was me even, but I still want to give myself that credit of I was there to facilitate it, and I must have done something right to make Cody that comfortable to be that forthcoming and to have a conversation like that. It always goes both ways. And even though, I'm trying to focus on what I can keep getting better at, it's nice to have little moments like that to give yourself a small pat on the back and then refocus and focus on the next thing, which I'm much better at than the pats on the back part.
Okay. Yeah. So then what other things do you see right now as your major improvement points? Just as an interviewer, working on the staying in that flow state of not getting caught thinking ahead and not actually listening and engaging with the guest. That's something that I had heard lots of podcasters talk about before, but you never really get to feel that feeling of trying to stay connected over 3 hours. It's very easy to get lost in train of thought, especially myself. I'm very much a scatterbrain kind of person. The squirrel goes by, I'm off. I lose my train of thought quite easily. And also I go off on tangents in my head. So it's a lot of working on staying focused, staying locked in with the guest over long interviews and not getting caught up in, one little piece that they said and kind of expanding that off of how it makes me think and going on a tangent and then realizing, 15 seconds later, the guest is keeping on talking. I have no idea what they just said kind of thing. I think that's one of my big improvements. I think just like infrastructure wise, either myself or bringing on somebody to help me to listen to the episodes after and like document the different things that are talked about, so that you give more usability to the podcast. You have people that can, it's a long episode when you're doing some of these, and I think just having something for people to skip around and just listen to the parts they want to, or maybe if it's a part that they're bored with, they can just skip to the next part and it would show that. I think that would be really helpful. And then I think also from there you can cut out little clips, 20 minutes, 5 minutes, and start posting those. And I think that is what's a real game changer and almost imperative. If you want to have success with a long form podcast, you have to be able to put it into chunks. It's just been the amount of time I've had to put towards that until just recently. I haven't had that. And now I plan on diving into that. I'm just really soaking up my newfound freedom, and I'm not working quite as hard as I had hoped I would in that first couple weeks. But I just kind of telling myself, I worked really hard and I'm just enjoying the feeling of it. And I know that those are things that need to come, as well as just getting all these other ventures, streaming, getting that off the ground. That's another big step forward. I need to take this business consulting. That's another big step forward I need to take. Getting sponsorships, that's another huge mountain that you got to climb. Not only just getting sponsorships, but learning the skills of how to make those sponsorships work, of how to talk on the mic and how to sell a product my way, and how to convince people in my own words why a product means something to me and why they should invest in it. I think that's a skill in itself, and I think I want to get practice. That's what I'm almost more excited about getting sponsors on, is less so the money that's going to be brought in, but more about the practice of trying to sell something, trying to monetize the podcast, because I feel like that's a skill. And I feel like when my favorite podcasts, when I watch them, they would get better at that over time. And I'm excited to start that process. And I'm sure there's a million other things that I need to get better at and I need to improve, but those are the ones that really stick out and that I'm kind of are on my radar right now. And maybe one more thing is building a team, because so far it's been a pretty solitary effort. There's been tons of people that helped me along the way, don't get me wrong, but I feel like what I was always so jealous of the podcast was, or of my favorite podcast, was watching
passionate people, like seeing the passion of the podcast and the podcaster, drawing people that are passionate about that and believe in it, and they build a team because they believe in it just as much as the host, right? Like, I'm trying to think of an example of this, like Lee Syatt to Joey Diaz, right? He was his right hand man, his producer, his editor. He did everything, but he was a part of the show too, and you can tell that he cared about it. And I love Joey Diaz's show, but I love Lee Syatt, his producer, just as much, right? And I can still follow him. I follow him to this day, even though they don't work together anymore. He's got his own podcast, but I really believe in him, right? Probably the best example is Jamie on Joe Rogan's, right? Like, pull that up, Jamie. I want to have my own Jamie. I want to have my own crew of people that are adding to these ideas. And when I'm doing these crazy tangents of where I want to take the podcast, that people are going to, help volley those ideas back and forth and really try and figure out, well, if that's what we want to do, what are the first steps? How do you do that? And I feel like I'm very good at ideas, and I'm good at execution too, but I feel like I spread myself too thin to be able to execute all these ideas. And the more people I can surround myself with that can help that side of it is just going to really increase the amount that I'm able to do. So I'm excited about that part as well.
Nice. Excellent. So I was just noticing, I wrote down these questions kind of as I thought of them, and they're going to bounce around. So if that's annoying to anybody who's listening, this is not my full-time gig. But to go back to the guests, are there any guests that come to mind that change the way you think?
Yes, for sure. I'm just trying to think of like good examples of. I know that one of the earlier episodes, David Akinnon. I think he was one of those people that really, changed. I really enjoyed the way that he looked at life and looked at problems and looked at problem solving, and just his idea of wanting to go make a difference in Africa, but also not getting caught up in the fact that it has to all be charity, of just saying, you know what, I believe in capitalism and making money. And I believe that that's the best way to help, is to make these things make money and have them facilitate and keep that, increasing and building in the community. But I think, people slow themselves down, but they get caught up in the race of trying to make it just be charity. It's non-profit, and that really puts a lot of restrictions on you. And if your goal is to make the most possible good and help the most amount of people, however that matters, it doesn't matter if it's charity or not. And I love that mindset of just, going into that. And it was something I had never really heard articulated that way, or that idea before. Rabbi Akiva, not only did that conversation we did on the podcast change the way I thought, but even just the little 30-minute introductory Zoom call we did before, just to him get to know who I was and kind of tell him why I wanted to have him on the podcast. That 30-minute conversation changed how I look at, like, he's a very interesting person. Just, I love that conversation. No one will ever get to hear it. It's just like, something between me and him, but that one definitely did. That episode I did with Cody, and to come back to that one, that changed how I looked at a lot of things. Representation, like, I think me and you actually talked about this a little bit. One of the biggest things that stuck with me from that first episode was how Cody was trying to articulate how tough it was to see him, to just come to the understanding that he was gay, because he had never seen any examples of a gay person like himself. Because he was saying, I was, all of the representation I would see on TV did not match who I was, and just so didn't line up with it, that the dissonance was really hard to wrap his head around, because just things didn't make sense, and how important that would have been for him to see maybe a professional athlete that really loved one of the sports he loved. If they came out as gay and they could show, like, it doesn't have to be all, rainbow flags and parades, or, that terrible examples that are probably, a little bit insensitive, but I'm trying to think of, stereotypes, right? But if there's a little bit less of that and more widespread representation, that really impacted me to show the importance of what representation is in certain things. And I think you probably know me as someone that when I see ham-handed representation and stuff like Avengers or Star Wars, I'm the first one to say that. And you were always very much someone that said, Nick, you need to understand what representation means to people and how impactful
it's not necessarily for you.
And it's not necessarily for you,
it's
right?
For someone else.
Exactly. And you've always been very quick to keep me in check on those type of things. And I always counter with, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And I think, Marvel was one of those examples of they really did it the right way for a long time. And, there was, one scene out of 50 movies, like, I'm giving Marvel a pass on it, right? You know what I mean? But, but even then, I think I give them more of a pass of even that scene that I didn't like, in Avengers, that to know what positive impact that could have, to give up 3 minutes of enjoyment out of a movie for the positive impact that it could have, right? Like, it's really changed my mind on that. And oh man, I'm just trying to think like if I'm sure if you gave me another 10 minutes or maybe at the end, I could say more, but there's so many guests that changed. I'd say almost every guest, like that question could almost be reframed as, was there any guest that didn't change how you think about the world? Right. And that's kind of my goal, to go into every episode with an open enough mind to have my mind changed on things, or to at least take something out of each one, to take with me going forward or into the next episode, so that I'm growing as a person, and hopefully people can watch that as the episodes get farther out into the future. They can kind of follow along and watch my growth as well, because that was really fun for me when I first found Joe Rogan and went back and watched his back catalog to when he's just doing it out of his house there, and kind of could watch the growth that I saw there, and then follow, you know, that's been 6 or 7 years probably since then, to watch how he's grown as a person and the blind spots he used to have, and to see in real time when those blind spots got filled in and when he got called on his bullshit by really smart intellectuals, and to see that going into the future when those topics came up, he would have a better mindset and more well-rounded, and to watch him grow with that's been amazing. And I'm really hoping that I can do that as well. And I know that I have blind spots and I'm not perfect in a lot of these areas, but as long as I can keep an open enough mind that if I get proven wrong on those, that I will take that to heart and hopefully move forward with a better understanding going forward, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. What was the question again?
Well, we started with any guests who changed the way you think.
Okay. Yeah, I think I answered that one.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree. And I was just thinking, like, we know we talked about this the other day, and you haven't listened to any of Armchair Expert by Dak Shepard. And I was saying to you that I listened back because he has quite a few interesting guests, both intellectuals and then just like public figures.
Yeah.
And I was saying, like, at first I found him a little bit hard to listen to. Like, he seemed a little narcissistic. He kept bringing stuff back to himself. But then, like, as you listen, you get to know him and you understand how he's trying to relate to the world. And then you start to actually, like, he's quite likable.
Yeah.
And I'm not comparing you to him in any way, but I'm just thinking that it'll be really interesting down the line to actually look back at this and see how you've grown.
And that's funny, you know, someone, I'll tell you after who it was, but someone we're close with was telling me, you know, kind of, we're talking about the podcast and stuff, and they just said, like, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but you kind of come off as if, you know, you're a know-it-all and all that. I said, I know exactly, like, I agree with you. Like, I know I come across that way, but I'm not going to pretend to be someone I'm not on the podcast, because that'll get sniffed out sooner than anything, right? Like, I know that, and I'm trying to work on that, and I see that in myself, and I'm trying to work on it to be better, but also, I also have love for that part of myself. Like, I think that's what makes me special, is that thought of that I have, you know, that it's probably a big part of it is just ego, but I love my ego, and I love what it does, and I love that it's protected me, and it's got me to this place. It's made me successful. And as much as I want to work to become more well-rounded, I also don't want to change who I am. I'd rather have love for that and work forward to try and make that more well-balanced, so I can have even more love for it, but to not change who that is, right? Of just how I come across with some of these subjects and how sure of it I am. And that's where I always say, you know, like, I am very stubborn, and it's hard to change my mind, but I feel like the caveat to that is that if someone comes with a good argument, and I'm very open to have my mind changed, but I don't do that easily. It has to be a good argument, right? And I feel like there's been countless times on the podcast so far that has shown that, of, you know, somebody hits me with a really well-reasoned argument on something I'm really, you know, passionate and strong on in a position. And you know what? I think you're one of the people in the world, you know, like, that probably if you take examples of, you know, if there's a running scoreboard of how many people have got those over on me, have changed their mind, you're probably one of the people in the world that has seen me do that the most. So you're probably familiar with that. But, you know, I'm proud of that, of who that makes me. And I think that's something that, of all the people that I look up to, like, I think I see that in Joe Rogan too, of, you know, he's a hard guy to argue with, and he will take you to the ends. But if you do, and you are successful, his mind changes, and you can watch that it's not just him giving somebody lip service in that moment. Then when it comes up, when that person that changed their mind isn't even in front of him, and maybe someone's making an even weaker argument, that still rings true, and he still brings that forward with him. And I really respect that. And I think that's something that I always want to make sure I'm holding in the forefront, holding that value high.
Yeah. And I think that, like, as a self-development point, just one thing to consider with your guests is that, so I do think that you come across very strong in your beliefs, and you enjoy the argument, but not everybody does, right? And so sometimes when you come out so hot, people just are like, oh, like
the fold
this,
over. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this isn't an argument I'm willing to have, because they almost get
steamrolled.
steamrolled is one way to do it, but like when I think about some people, like I do my best to stay as open-minded as I can at work because I don't want anybody to ever feel like my personal beliefs are going to stand in the way of me giving them equal treatment. And I was just thinking about it today. I had a patient who was talking about some stuff and they were speaking in a way that they were like, oh, blah, 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 hey. And like they were saying some stuff that like doesn't necessarily ring true with my personal belief system. But like I've been able to like have a relationship with them enough that like they almost feel like I can agree with them on anything. And I was thinking to myself, like, I'm glad that I'm a blank canvas that nobody feels uncomfortable to say what they really feel because maybe we differ and that they don't feel uncomfortable to speak about that. But then I was thinking about the other side of that maybe they don't know kind of the things that I would like to stand for. And maybe that's like not for healthcare because I don't think that anybody should be denied healthcare, even though like that might be a tough conversation point these days. But I do think that when you're coming up to these guests, just keeping in mind that sometimes you can come off real hot, and that can scare people back from like having those conversations
for
with you.
sure. And I think that is something that I like to think that I've gotten better with over these 100 episodes of noticing that. And there's been tons of time where, you know what, I do the same thing where just, you know what, I don't agree with this, but I don't want to steamroll. I don't want to be in this. I'm just going to, you know, nod and agree with it. And, who was I talking to the other day? I think it was actually Cody before he was asking if we're doing video. And I said, no, we're not doing video. And I was saying how he was asking me kind of what, if I like video or not video in doing these episodes. And I was saying, sometimes with the video, it's nice because there's times where a guest will say something that is either I think is just factually incorrect or like bad science or whatever, but it's not worth derailing the whole conversation. So I'll just kind of, you know, like just give like a facial expression. You know what? Sure. Like just going to let them pass and just kind of change the subject. But at least there's something documented that if someone ever came to me, because what I don't like in just the audio is if someone, well, you didn't push on that like that. They said A and you know B to be true. You've said it in other episodes that B to be true. Why did you just let them? Why didn't you hold them to their feet to the fire in that moment? And just to say, like you're saying, sometimes it's just not worth it. And to know that, but it's nice on the video of even for myself, I went back and, well, I don't know. I'll go back and I'll listen to it to see why, to see that of just like, oh, I could see myself in that moment. I didn't believe that. It wasn't worth it to me. And it's kind of nice to have those little cues of almost the visual side of it. I don't know if that's going to make much sense to people, but I kind of like to have that because I do notice that more and more I'm doing that. And, and I know which guests and I'm kind of prepared for that coming into it because I think there's been guests, lately where because of certain things they know my stance on and they're worried that, you know, they're worried to come on the show to begin with because they don't want to stumble into one of those subjects where they know we'd be at loggerheads. And I think being in this position of having a podcast and being very vocal about the fact that, you know what, I love a good argument, right? And it's always going to be coming from love. I never want to get heated. Like, and I don't think it has at any point in any of the podcasts so far gotten heated, but I feel like that scares people because they don't want to be forced into that. Maybe they just don't, they believe in it, but not strongly enough to get in an argument over it.
And I don't even know if it's like they believe in it, but not strongly enough. It's just that I think that when you think about somebody who's coming at it with such force that not everybody's brain works that fast, you know, like, some people, when they have somebody who's coming at them really fast, their brain just shuts down. Right. Yeah. And like we always laugh about how we listen to podcasts at a really fast speed. And I think that, I don't know, like sometimes I feel like my brain trips over my words now because I feel like my thoughts are going so fast that I can't speak fast enough. Yeah. And I think that you are able to get your words out fast, but some people are still processing and they can't argue back at that speed. Right. Yeah. And so like, it's not even that they don't believe in it strong enough, but like
they're not set up to succeed. So it's hard to step into it. Yeah, exactly. They're going to be at a disadvantage. And I see that. And that's kind of what I was trying to say of kind of like just me being a professional, which is weird to say now that I am, but like a professional arguer at the end of the day, right? Too, that's, I have a lot of, I'm getting more and more experience every day. And just to have that being ahead of it, not to mention everything you just mentioned, right? It's just not the place where, and that's why I want to make sure that it's open where these conversations don't have to go anywhere. And like, if there's a subject we don't want to talk about, we don't have to. And, and I have been trying to get better at that of not getting to those points, because that's the thing of like, I don't have to have this argument with, or any one argument with any one person, right? Like if it's a certain argument that needs to be had, hopefully eventually I will have an expert in that domain, so that's the time to have an argument. Like if you bring on an expert in something to press them, that's where you can press, right? Like I don't need to press some, a secretary about, medical stuff, right? Like that's just silly to me. And it doesn't mean that I would love, if they want to have a discussion, I love discussion. I love discussion because that's where I feel like I get better with my ideas. And when you test it against people, you see what arguments are strong, what arguments are weak, what arguments are completely wrong, and you're missing a complete other side to it that you haven't seen. Right. I really enjoy doing that, but at no point would I ever want to force it, or is it ever required? Because, like the other thing is people always are worried when I ask them to come on the show, what will we talk about? And I'm always like, don't worry about that. That's on me. And I can talk about anything for hours and hours and hours. So like, you don't need to be worried about that. And it's not like if there's one subject to worry about that we cannot fill a lot of time with every other subject under the moon, right? Like, so yeah, but I am definitely trying to get better at that of gauging, when it's time for an argument or for a discussion on some of these, and when you just let it go by and try and, roll your boat down a little bit of a different path kind of thing.
And it's funny because I was just thinking like that's one style of argument. But then I was thinking about like my friend Erica is brilliant, and she's
been on the podcast.
Yes. And she does things so differently. Like she almost like flips it on its head to the person.
Yeah. And
so she makes them like almost like counter their point a little bit.
Exactly.
And it's so gentle, but so effective.
Yeah. And I love that. That's some of my favorite people, the Weinstein brothers. They always talk about, they use that. That's one of their main tactics. They call it steel manning, right? There's like a straw man argument where you have to steel man. So take the other position they're arguing against and show the strongest side of it, because then you show understanding and you show understanding of it, and proves that you've sat with the idea and you can make that argument back to them, right? Like, and that's what I like about lots of things I've been arguing with lately is I feel I have a strength of I can argue from both sides. I could hop on the other side of lots of these things that I'm really passionate about if I wanted to, or if I had the right guest on. And that's what I'm really excited about too, is getting guests on that take my position so I can argue against them to make sure that they're doing it, like that they're arguing my side the right way, because that's the thing I've been so frustrated with as of late. I think lots of COVID stuff is I hear so many people that are, I get lumped into being on their side, and the way their arguments, like that is not the way I feel. I'm so like my position is so different from this, but you get kind of lumped into that. And I would love to have those people on to try and make sure that they're arguing better and that they're not using, like really bad science or like, I'm sure we've both seen stuff that we can just laugh at lately of people throwing out things that are just asinine, right? From both sides too. But that's what I'm saying of like, I want to hold both sides accountable so that at least if we're going to be throwing barbs at each other, have them be accurate so that the process moving forward. If we're just throwing nonsense at each other, it's not helping anything, and it just muddies the water type of things. But I really like, and that's exactly, I'm glad you brought up Erica, because that's what I was thinking when we talked about like, arguing if, maybe one of the podcasts was more argumentative than others was probably me and Erica, because we did do that, but it was so positive and it was never angry. It was very polite, and, I feel like that was a really good representation of what it should be at its best, of what an argument should be at its best, of people, like you say, of her showing understanding of my side to try and, but then adding that in with another layer of, but have you looked at it with this layer on top of it too, right? Like,
or why do you like think this and that?
Yeah, exactly. Or and breaking down of the most important piece as she sees it of your argument, asking you to clarify on that. Like, I love all that stuff. And that's what I'm thinking. Like, if we had a whole world of Ericas, the world would be a great place, right? Because that forces the analytical side. What I feel like Erica's style really does is it doesn't stand for uninvestigated thought. And one of the worst things in the world that I see is uninvestigated thought. And that is something you see, and that's something I don't have a lot of. I think of everything. Like, I really like to sit with stuff and think deeply on a lot of these subjects and take them to the next layers and think of why and stuff. And I feel like so many people, that's not their favorite thing maybe, or I don't know what it is, but for whatever reason they don't. And I think a lot of times when you get into an argument with someone like Erica, they're not going to stand for that. They want to make sure that you've thought about these things and you're not just saying something because it's the thing to say. She doesn't stand for talking points, right? You have to have ideas behind the words that you're saying. And she's one of the best people I've ever seen at enforcing that. And I feel like I learned a lot from Erica just over the years. I think taking the podcast out of it, just every time I talk to Erica, I feel like I learn good lessons about how to do that myself, because Like, I think when going and saying that, like, I think Erica would be great on a podcast of having that. And if people got in front of her and like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I would love to be able to be more like Erica. And I feel like that would, if I can become more like Erica and in all the ways we just talked about, that will make me a better podcaster.
Which is kind of the point that I was getting at.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Like
I see that too.
You're already great at arguing the way that you argue.
Yeah.
But to grow so that you're able to have these discussions in a constructive way with people who don't receive that quick, fast pace.
Yeah.
I think that being a little bit more like Erica, like it's a little bit more inviting to people to have that conversation as opposed to shutting them down.
Yeah. 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 You're very right. I would agree with that.
Okay, cool. So changing tack a little bit, what was your biggest podcast related failure and what did you learn?
I'm not sure if it would be my biggest failure. Like, I'm thinking I might have bigger failures than this that I'm just not remembering in the moment. But I do, one that sticks out to me was, I was at work all day and was having not a great day, and I was very frustrated with things, and I was trying to think of the podcast that night, and I just wasn't in the right headspace, and I had to work late, so I didn't have time to do my meditation before. I wasn't as prepared as I wanted to be, and I went into an interview, and I wasn't at my best, and nobody would catch it. I don't think anyone would be able to pick that podcast out of the bunch, but I felt so bad about like that guest giving me their time, giving me hours out of their day, and for me not to bring everything I could to that interview. I just felt terrible about it. Like, I just felt icky. Like, I know I can be better than this. And I think that was kind of the start of the demise of, I had so much, what's the word? Resentment towards work because of that, of, I don't really want to be doing this job. I'm kind of trapped in this. And now the podcast is suffering because of that. And that was really tough for me. And I kind of sat with that, but I learned a lot of it. I learned that I needed to, whatever I need to do to make sure that I have enough time to get my meditation in, even if that means I got to take off an hour early of work and just go home even though the podcast is at 5 and I work till 5, I'm going to take off work at 4, make sure I get home, get settled, do my meditation, and then hop on, because that means something to me. And I don't want to feel that feeling that I felt of not being prepared. And I think that was one of those ones where you know what, it's only a failure to me in my own head, but it meant something to me and I learned lessons from it. Other big failures, you know, like, I don't know. That's a tough one because in my head, it's all failure, but that's just kind of how I look at things. And that's how I wish the second podcast I did with Cody was released before we had this conversation, because we talked a ton about because we're very similar. And I think, and just in the discussion we're coming from, I think this comes from having a big ego. And I always had a big ego, right? And I always thought that I had this grandiosity of thought. But in our family, modesty was always a very big thing, and it was very much shut down every time that ego. So that I was chopped down, right? Of no, like, that's not how we act. This is how we do it. So I was always on the look of that ego, that cockiness when it got too much. So I had this really strong negative mental feedback loop in my head of everything you do is shit. You're never good, right? Like, just to keep that kind of balanced out and that was kind of my balancing factor. But I think it also created a lot of self-hatred. And that was why I really struggled with self-love for a lot, because I always had that. And I feel like it was scary to lose that, because that was my drive. That was what made me want to be better all the time. And I think, you know, like, it's not a completely negative thing. And I feel like I've found love for that. And I have love for what that did for me in life, but I don't need it as much. And now I've tried to balance that out with a lot of love and try to quiet that voice down and don't listen to that voice all the time, right? But it's still there. And I think that's what makes me, you know, always want to get better at the podcast, you know, because like I said, I'm very proud of the podcast I do, but I know what I could be better. And I'm always thinking like, oh, that's shit compared to what I could do, right? Like, every once in a while, there'll be a podcast like that one I did with Cody, like I said, where I can see that one podcast is like, oh, that's, you know, I'm proud of that one. But other than that, you know, like, it's, I just, it's that comparison, and like the way I compare with myself and how big of an image that is, it's always failure, because you're never going to reach those highs of kind of what I see of myself, of like my full capabilities. But that's that ego talking again of, you know, the way I see it of, you know, I should already have a clips channel. I should already have I should have been streaming months ago. I had all the things in place. I'm just being a coward, right? Like the business consulting thing, I could have started that already. I could be up to like multiple podcasts a week. I could be doing all this stuff, but it's just, laziness and letting other factors, stand in the way of what I know to be true and I know to be my passion, right? And not standing up earlier, not quitting my job earlier, right? Like all those things. And yeah, you could argue that that's just a mindset and those things aren't failures. But if I'm trying to be honest with you, right, like that is, like trying to identify failures, it's tough because it all feels like failure to me.
Do you think that you ever compare yourself the opposite way though? Because you're only comparing yourself to what you view as your highest ability.
Right.
But if you think about how many podcasts got launched in the last year alone and they only went so far,
right?
Or those people who are doing a podcast, but they never give up their corporate job because they're never brave enough to try.
Yeah. And again, this is maybe too honest because it's going to probably make me sound bad, but like, yes, I understand that those comparisons are there, but to me, those people are losers and I don't compare myself to losers. You know what I mean? But that's bad. And I try not to, like it's something I don't like to talk about too much of just, in my head, like I have a very high bar of what I expect out of people. Right. And I think that's what's tough at work too is, like, and actually me and Ingo talking about on episode 100 of like, it's hard being at work and seeing things very clear and things come easy to you of like, what are we going to do here? And you say, well, have you tried this and this? And it becomes pretty clear to you. Oh, I didn't even think of that. Right. And it's like, I understand that there is that. And I do try to, like when I'm in those moments of trying to give myself the pats on, that's kind of the framework.
And it's not giving yourself pass. It's giving yourself grace.
Pats. No. Pats on the back is what I mean. Like,
okay.
When I'm trying to be, like when I'm trying to reflect and give myself those positive moments of kind of looking back and being proud of like at the 100 episode, like that's what I try and do of realize, like, yeah, like you say, everyone always throws out that stat. There's 2 million podcasts out there. But when you look at who's actually released a podcast in the last 3 months, like which ones those are active, it's like a couple 100,000, right? Like, cause podcasting's fucking hard. It's a lot of work. And I understand that. Right. And you're right that, compared to all those other people, but again, it's that higher standard that I have to myself of, yeah, it doesn't matter what those people are doing. You're not those people. You're special, right? Like, and I've always had in my head of, you're going to do special things. You have a higher purpose or whatever it is. I've thought that since I was a little kid, right? Like I've always had that feeling of I'm going to do great things one day. And because of that, I only compare myself with people that I really idolize, right? Like or that I really respect. And for some reason, I just think, and I think also part of that too is I feel so lucky of like, yeah, all those other people quit, but did those people have parents that, wrote cue cards all over the walls and taught you to read at like 2 years old? So you're reading Harry Potter in like grade 2 and shit. Like I'm so lucky to have what I had and to put me in this position of like, I don't put a lot of that. I don't put on myself. I'm so lucky with that. But for that reason, I should be comparing myself with those people that had those same advantages to, you know what I mean? Like, like that was a mean thing to say of like, I don't compare myself to those people because they're losers, but it's like, that's not their fault that they're losers, right? Like that's not a judgment I'm making on them. That is just a evaluation of kind of where they are. And like, you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to just take everything out of it and just looking at like the horsepower that they possess and what they achieve with that horsepower. But I just think like what I got under the hood, I have to have bigger expectations because I know that of myself and I know the power of my mind and what I can do if I really set myself to it kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah. It's very convoluted and hard to explain, but I think it's important to try and get across.
And I do think that I get it. And I guess like maybe it's part of me doesn't want to ever like look at people in like there's people who've had certain things going for them and certain things that aren't going for them and that there shouldn't be different expectations based on that.
Yeah.
And just that like, I think that like my brain automatically rejects the word loser because I just.
Yeah. And that was a poor word to use in that situation. I was just struggling for one better, but yeah.
But I do see what you're saying, but I also think that puts a lot of pressure on yourself.
For sure it does. Right. And I understand that. And I try to use that as that in those moments where I'm trying to, find the grace and give myself the space for that that's what I'm trying to tell myself is those exact things. Right. Like I just found that like, that's something I have to work for, but my natural disposition of what I naturally do without any work is hating everything I do, comparing myself only with these really high achievers, like that type of thing of not taking the easy wins of comparing myself to people that aren't doing as much, because I feel like that doesn't matter. That doesn't apply to me. Why would you take the easy wins of that? Why would you give yourself free pats on the back? Because the way I look at it, if you go down that road, why do I even do anything? The fact that I can read, that makes me better than a really good part of the population. Well, I might as well just kick my heads back like this and put my feet up because I'm better. You know what I mean? Like I think that's a dangerous way of thinking. I think it's important too, because you need to find that balance. You can't be so hard on yourself. Like I think at times I fall too far to that side, but I think it's also dangerous on the other side because you can really reflect. And also because I know that I have a laziness inside me that's very innate. I'm always on the lookout for it. Just like I know that there's that innate cockiness that comes with that big ego, and I'm always on the lookout for it because I hate when it shines through and I'm very embarrassed of it. Same thing with that laziness. And I know that. And that was one of the biggest things I think with quitting this job and going into this of, what it felt like the biggest worry was that, mom and dad were worried that I was just going to, sit on the couch and do nothing. And it was tough to argue that, hey, that's not going to happen, because I'm worried about that too, and I don't think that's unfounded that they do have that worry, because I know that I see that myself in me. So why wouldn't they see that in me? And sure, that hurts. And it's not fun to be, not that they ever called it out. They never said that explicitly, but that's, I can read between the lines, and yeah, that sucks, but that's just extra fuel to know of like, yeah, that is something that's in me. I do have that capacity to be lazy, but I'm going to work. And that's why it's worrying. That's what's worrying about me, of saying, you know what, I'm just enjoying this first week of freedom, and I'm not, spending 8 hours a day calling sponsors and getting everything lined up. And you know what, I just started on Friday, and I've recorded Friday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'll do 6 episodes in 7 days, right? Like, so yeah, I am working hard, but just, again, I could be doing more. And I'm always thinking of that, like, regardless how hard I work, there's always more I could be doing. Mm-hmm. But if I keep in that mindset, that will keep me away from the other side of it, of just being lazy and sitting home playing video games all day kind of thing.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. What makes you feel inspired?
Podcasts, listening to my favorite podcasters, right? Like when Lex Friedman has on some scientists that absolutely changed the way I look at the world, right? Like maybe it's a virologist, maybe he had a judo champion on, and just listen to the highs that he's achieving all the time. He's only been doing it for 150 episodes, like relative to some of the Joe Rogans of the world. It's a very early podcast, but it's getting better at such a fast rate, and he's always hitting these new highs and these new frequencies that he's never hit before, and that he's still growing, and he's only 34, 35 years old, and that, the possibilities are endless. That just fills me up with fire of eventually I'm going to be at that point, right? And when I'm his age, when I'm 34, imagine what I'll be doing with it. That gives me a lot of faith. I think seeing the success of somebody like Joe Rogan, and to see the appetite there is for that type of knowledge and that type of information and that type of, nuanced, not picking any sort of narrative to fall into, and just, checking all the boxes with that of, I'm going to be really left on something, I'm going to be really right on some things, and you're going to find, and it's always going to be somewhere in the middle. And to see that, it's doing nothing but going up, and these, the classic media like CNN and Fox are just crashing into the toilet, and they're just scratching at the walls. They're doing anything they can. They just have a giant death ticker on the side just to keep people scared, to keep people watching, because they know that their ratings are just plummeting. And that's so inspiring to me to know that, like, it makes me believe in the human race, that like we are not all just robots. Listen, and we want to do this. Like there's a lot of powers that be that want to keep the old ways and want to keep the old structures in place. But there's such a drive, and the internet is such a wild place that it's breaking through, and it's breaking at the seams. And you see people starting to open their eyes to what the universities are and all this stuff, and media. And it's like, oh, people are waking up slowly. And that just makes me so excited. And I'm so excited because I feel like I'm betting on the right horse, and it's happening slowly, but it's happening. And that in 5 years from now, the landscape's going to look amazingly different, and I'm going to be way ahead of the game in front of all these people of, guessing on the right horse and putting myself in the position to succeed where things are going.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's a common myth about podcasting, or something you wish people knew about podcasting?
I think I already kind of mentioned one of the big myths is everyone thinks that, there's so many podcasts, everybody has podcasts. Yes. But also with that, podcasts are hard, and people quit, and there's not as many as you think, or there's not as many that do them. One of the big things that get me is how many things get called a podcast. Of like, I've had friends who are like, hey, I'm starting a podcast, and it's 10 episode season of 5-minute episodes that they all recorded in one afternoon, and they get to call that a podcast. And it's like, is it though? Like, I don't know. Right. Like, I feel like that gets me. That's one of those things where, as long as it's on a podcast app, which I think is great. I love that freedom of just allowing it to be whatever it is, as long as it's audio format. You just plug it in, you can call it a podcast. But for some people, and then there's the other side of the coin, like Dan Carlin, where with those hardcore histories you put together, you want to call that a podcast? That's an insult to what that is. That's a work of art. That is like, that's history gold. It's so much more than a podcast, right? And you see the spectrum, but for whatever reason, it's just, it all gets fallen under this one category. And it's kind of interesting to me to see how that goes. What other myths? I don't know. I guess it was a myth to me of kind of my understanding. I thought I knew a lot about podcasts and what went into them. I didn't realize how hard it was. Like, I didn't know how much work was going to be into it, and how much, assistance I'm going to need in the long run of it. You know what? Like, currently I'm doing it more or less by myself. Obviously I've had tons of help along the way, but, in terms of like dedicated 100% people that are working on, it's just myself. But that's not going to, I know that is unfeasible in the long run. I'm going to need some serious, full-time help. And I think that was something that was, kind of a myth that I busted for myself right off the bat. Mm-hmm. What else would people I wish knew about podcasts? I just wish more people knew about podcasts. Like, it's huge, and it's the amount of people that are listening each year. It's crazy how big just like the medium in general is growing. But I still think it's just a drop in the bucket, and more people are going to be learning it and figuring it out. And again, I'm happy on the path I'm betting on, because I think in the long run it's going to be a pretty good bet.
So if you could tell yourself one thing like, let's say 5 minutes after you made the decision, 5 minutes after you press send or like purchase on the podcast equipment, what would you tell yourself?
That's a great question.
It's so funny watching you, because you do these things that Dad does when you're thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like the body mannerisms.
Yeah. I'm sure I do. I'm around with so much and taking all that in. That would have been funny to get the video of me and Ingrid. Yeah. The same mannerisms.
Probably.
The same laughs.
Just mirroring each other.
What would I tell? I feel like it's tough to answer, because there's so many things that are popping in my head of things I'd want to say, like, like just maybe just a little bit of a heads up of like, hey, this is going to be really meaningful, but it's going to be really hard, and just prepare yourself. Like, make sure you love it at every point and you don't let it get away from you. Maybe of just giving yourself of like, hey, you have it in your head that you can wear both hats and you can do both work in that, and you're going to realize that is not true, and it's going to put you in a really dark spot. Like, or, hey, you're going to feel some depression like you've never felt it, and be prepared, because that's some tough times, right? Like, I don't know. There's a million things I would tell myself, but also I wouldn't tell myself nothing, because I wouldn't change anything for the world of, like how it all worked out and where I am now and how proud I am of what I've done, right? Like I said, sure, I can sit here for 4 hours and tell you what it could be, but I am still very proud of what I did and what I went through, and who I am personally sitting on the other side of it, what lessons I learned and how much I've grown, right? Like, I'm still so proud of that I wouldn't change it for the world. I'd just tell myself, hey, buckle up. You're going to have a great time. Yeah.
Okay. So are there any areas or careers or fields that you're really curious about and you want to talk to someone about? So for crowdsourcing here, if somebody in the listening audience knows somebody that we could.
So many. So just starting in kind of the MMA world, right? Like, more fighters, coaches, nutritionists, people that talk about weight cutting, people that are within the organizations talking about like matchmaking and stuff, of what goes into that. I would love to. What goes into running an organization like that? Esports. I want to talk about anybody in that world, right? Coaches, these esports owners that run these teams that started, right? Like Cloud9, like their whole organization. I'd interview anybody in them, any of their players, any of their, organizational staff, scientists, right? Pretty much anybody that Lex Friedman has had on his podcast. I want every one of those guys on, like, all these, all these Nobel Prize winners and mathematicians and stuff. Like, I would love to be able to interview them. And what I feel like Lex Friedman does so well is he's such a high intellect that he can almost translate super genius into genius. And then dum-dums like me can listen and just pick up, 10% of it or whatever. But what I think I can do is I can take it from genius down to like, above average. I don't know. Like, I feel like I can do the same thing that Lex Friedman's doing, but one more level of like, because when I'm listening to them talk of like, I only pick up on, some podcasts, I only pick up on 5% of what they're saying. The rest of it's all gibberish, right? But some of them I'm really connecting with, and I feel like at times I'm always I wish I could be that fly on the wall to just say like, okay, you guys I could see, Lex really struggling with a concept and he reframes it in a way that shows that they understand it, right? And I can kind of pick that up. But what I can see is, there's another way to reframe this that would bring in a whole other group of people that just a little bit simpler, right? Because he's still so smart that sometimes he thinks he's dumbing it down, but he's only dumbed it down like one level and it's still super complex. Right. But there's some like, and I feel like maybe Joe Rogan is a better example of that. Sometimes he's really good at it. Like he can kind of take it down to caveman level of, and he's a lot smarter than he lets on too. But he's also excels at that of kind of keeping himself as I'm just this dumb comedian. And he kind of brings it down to dumb comedian level, right? And I feel like that's where I'm really excel with. So I really like to bring on some of those really high intellectual minds and talk to them. Anybody from the Ayn Rand Institute, because I really love her philosophy, objectivism, and I would love to talk to somebody about that. Hockey, anybody at the NHL, anybody, like a pro sport, like even EHL or USHL or all these like little underling leagues of that, of kind of any sort of pro sports, really. I'd love to. Football, like authors. I have a whole spreadsheet of these people. I probably should have looked at it before to say, but yeah, no, there's a ton. And then I'd say of all those things, then there's just the biggest group is just my podcasters of like my podcasts that I listen to, right? The Joe Rogans, the world's, the Lex Friedmans, the Pete Holmes, the Brendan Schaubs, the Brian Callens, Leanne Kreischer, right? Like those people, Bert, Tom Segura, right? Like Christina P. I would love to have these type of people on. Or I'm excited to have these people on because I know I will, right? Like I believe that very deeply, and it might take some years, but I know I'm going to have these people on. And then what's cool to me is it's not just the Toms and the Christinas of like the Nadav, like their producer, like I was talking about with you. I would love to have Nadav, and I probably could. And now that I have like the time to reach out, like maybe I will reach out to Nadav and have him on and like talk to these people, but their whole crew. I would love to interview everybody with that whole Your Mom's House crew that runs their shows and their network. I would love to interview anybody in that space, right? Like, and I feel that with so many of these podcasts of just like Flagrant 2 with Andrew Schultz and all those, like every guy that's on there, Alex Media and Mark Agnon and Dove and all these guys are just part of that crew. Like, because you get such a insightful look into who they are just by the little pieces of what they add to the show over hundreds of episodes, you really get a good piece of who they are. And I'm very interested in those people. So I feel like I would be able to really give them a great interview. Yeah, no, there's so many people I want to, and I have a lot of ideas of kind of ways to kind of what I'm doing right now is putting that out into the world of who those people are to just kind of, just by chance, if they do stumble upon it and they be willing kind of thing. Starting to put, once a week, maybe put out a top 10 list in a certain thing, like my top 10 MMA gets, or my top 10 podcaster gets, or my top 10 scientist gets, right? Like, Lisa Feldman Barrett, that one, that lady that wrote a couple books on the brain and has, for my money, one of the best modern understandings of how the mind works. She wrote 7 lessons about the mind and how emotions are made and a bunch of really great books. She's awesome. Like, I would love to have her on, right? And I think she's funny as shit. Like when she was on Lex Friedman, like her humor is very, it's easily missed. And I feel like there was at times where like, and Lex sometimes doesn't pick up on the humor as much, but she was so goddamn funny in that interview, right? Like, and sometimes picked up on, but like I would love to, try and pull more of that out of her and see like a different side, because obviously I couldn't give the same type of interview that Lex Friedman gives, but I feel like my little special brand would really pull parts of these people out that would really highlight other areas of what makes them special that maybe hasn't been highlighted in past podcasts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then looking forward into the future on episode 500, where do you want to be?
Where do I want to be?
Or what goals do you want to have reached?
Yeah. Like I said, or like I've said in the past, one of the biggest things to me is guest access. And I feel like so many of the things that I have to put value on certain things that I don't value in order to build up access to guests. Like, I don't care about Instagram followers. I can be honest about that. Like, maybe on some level, like unconsciously I do. I'm sure everybody does, but at the end of the day, the only reason I want Instagram followers is because that gives me access to bigger guests, because when you reach out to them, they see, a little checkmark by the name, that's another level you get, right? So I hope by episode 500, I'm having the ability to get the access to the type of guests that I want. And if nothing else, if it still doesn't make any money and, I'm still living at my parents' place, whatever, as long as I have access to guests That's my biggest thing. But certain other things, I'd love to have a studio, a consistent place where I could leave all this stuff set up and I can walk in so I don't have to have all the added stress of, is the equipment going to work? On top of it, stressful enough to make sure am I going to give a good interview? I'd love to be able to have that. I'd love to have some staff that really cared about the projects I was doing and wanted to invest with me. I would love to have, a solid Twitch channel that had a good following, that I could do all these other weird ideas of different things to stream there and have some people come watch. I would love to see this business consulting thing get off the ground, and hopefully maybe have a few people, a few members of staff too that help work. Help work with that. I know Ingo's talked about, maybe if he hangs it up with what he's doing now, of like coming on board with that, because he has such a good business mind of, helping with that side of it. Like, that's exciting to me. And I hope that I've grown a lot, and I hope that all the things that we kind of talked about earlier of, just trying to make sure that I'm always learning from each episode and adding to that I'm growing as a person. Hope I have at least a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. add that to the list. Yeah. I hope I've interviewed some really cool people. I hope I had some really great conversations. I hope I've impacted some people and given something to think about that they take with them forever. I'm sure there's some other things, but those are kind of the big ones that pop in my head right off the hop of what I'd want to do with it. Nice. And then there's also, I don't know if I've ever told you my big idea that I haven't told anyone yet, of kind of what I want to, a certain thing I want to restart. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah. So that one, I think by episode 500, that might be a little early. I think that's kind of one of those dreams that I might need a couple more years, but I don't want to limit myself like that. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm already a couple years into it at that point. Who knows? But that's maybe one that we'll just let the guests tantalize over what that one is. But that in the end is kind of my end goal. Not end goal, because I want to do bigger things than that. But right now, of what I'm looking at, of like the biggest goal that's on my plate right now, that's probably it.
I hope I'm not too old to enjoy it.
You won't be. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it could be 10, 20 years. We'll see. I'm sure we'll enjoy it however old we are, because I'm thinking the same thing. Yeah.
There may be some more physio requirements.
Yes, there will.
Okay. So, what's one question you wish I had asked you?
What makes you so deadly? I don't know. A question that I wish you asked me, or a question that I would want to be asked.
As the professional podcaster in this equation.
That's a. You kind of hit the ones that I thought of. Kind of what's your favorite episode? That one I was waiting for. Yeah, where do you want to be? I don't know. Can I come back to that one? I might need to think on that one more. It's a great question, but I'm blanking.
What is one of the best compliments you've received over the last 100 episodes?
Oh man, there's been some gooders. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if any one stands out. Like, they've been some really, I feel like it's kind of a combination of the ones that stick out to me are kind of the ones where I was very surprised by who was saying it and how heartfelt the words it was coming from. Of like, the ones that really impacted me were those where I would have never guessed in a million years that this person would have ever even listened to him, let alone be impacted enough to write down some really poignant words and clearly take some time of writing out like a paragraph of why I impacted them. Like, and that's happened multiple times. And those ones really impact me and really keep me going, because that's good to know that you're not just affecting those people that are in your, very close circle of impact, right? That it's starting to ripple out further and further. That was really cool. One just recently, maybe that I could say was, somebody that I didn't know at all, reached out and just sent me a message and just said, "Hey, you won't know who I am. Like, I just saw you through X and Y and Z and just kind of followed along. And I really enjoyed your podcast. Like, it means a lot to me. I really respect and believe in what you're doing. And like, I see like just the way he he worded it, I could really tell he understood what I was trying to do. And that's tough because I haven't even articulated fully what I'm trying to do with this podcast. In bits and pieces, if you watch the whole 100 episodes, you probably have a pretty good idea, but never once was I kind of like laying out, but from what he was saying, I could tell he gets it. Mm-hmm. And that meant a lot to me for it to be coming from somebody, you know, it means a lot when it's, you know, a good friend too, but when it's someone you don't know, for some reason, it just, it means just all that bit extra because, you know, it's not due to you being nice to them at some point, right? Like that's always in the back of your head of, you know, like, are they, you know, do they actually like the podcast, or is this just, you know, I've been nice to them and they're trying to be nice to me kind of thing? Because I like to think I'm nice to most people. Like that's something I try and value, but you always don't know in the back of your mind. Yeah. I feel like I feel like I could have answered that question better. I feel like there's probably one that sticks out in my head that I should know, but.
Okay. So then on the other flip side of the coin, what's the most influential constructive feedback that you've received?
Maybe the kind of what I talked about earlier about trying to stay locked into the conversation and not get too caught up in what you're going to say, and trying to just really be in the moment and listen to what they're saying. I think kind of early on when I was already recognizing that myself, because I'd always heard that going into it before I even started the podcast, but I didn't realize how hard it was and why so many people talked about that, because it's really difficult not to. And I think I was recognizing it myself and knowing I need to work on this. But I didn't think it was that apparent to other people. But then I got called on and somebody saying it to me. And I was like, oh shit, well, it must be pretty bad if people can hear it. And then I really doubled down and really have been focusing hard on that. And that's when I started, really concentrating on making notes and just saying, this is something I would like to say or I'd like to bring up. And I'm going to write it down. If it fits, it fits. If it comes in naturally, it will. But if not, I'm fully okay with it. Just, I don't need to say everything I want to say. And I'm going to do this for many, many years. And I will get to say everything I ever want to say in all these different avenues. I don't need to say it. If it works, it works, and just letting it go. And I think sometimes getting called on that in the moment, and yeah. And so many of them, like I'd say almost every piece of advice that has been most impactful were ones that I'd already seen in myself, but to hear other people call you on it really makes it drives it home, because most of the biggest things, like I said, like nobody could ever say something to myself that would be half as bad of what I've already said to myself. You know what I mean? Like, but when they land on something that you already see in yourself and you already hold, like when it really almost triggers you, those are the ones you really know, because you know that it's already true and you're already seeing that. And if other people are, you really have to take it seriously and jump at it quickly.
Okay. So if you got 3 podcast wishes.
Oh, like in terms of guests or in terms of like?
Just in general. The genie says you get 3 podcast wishes.
Oh man, that's a good question. That's so hard. I would say I would love to do like an internship of like going and like running my podcast out of like one of my favorite studios, like go to New York for 6 months and go to Andrew Schultz Studios and, sit in with Flagrant 2s, but also run my podcast out of, but get to work with those individuals and like rub my creative spirit up against theirs kind of thing. But that I can also apply that could be down in Texas at your mom's house studios, right? Doing it with them, or that could be in Texas with Joe Rogan, doing it with him. That could be in up in Washington with Brett and Heather Weinstein of doing 6 months with them, of just learning from them and doing my own thing at the same time. I would love to do that with any of those ones that I really look up to. Like I'd say some sort of opportunity to learn from and also help them as well, of bringing me as a fan of their show for so long. Or one of those would be like Ariel Helwani. He's one of the biggest MMA journalists of, 6 months of with him and all the contests and stuff. I'd say that would be one of them. If it's a genie, I mean, build a podcast complex like Rogan has, right? Like for sure, of that other idea we're not talking about earlier, but build that into it, right? And build a full gym out and maybe some jujitsu mats and have that there. Have a ping pong table, like everything I could ever want. Just build like kind of my Rob Dyrdek's fantasy factory of podcasting, right? Like exactly, you know what I mean? Like, so that would definitely be one of them, and then I think my my third wish would be to have it so that every time Lex Friedman has a guest on, there's a added clause that says, you know, once you go on the Lex Friedman podcast, you have a pass to, if you choose, because I never want to force them, right? I wouldn't want to say like, I get to have every guest he has, but just to say like, if you want to, you can have an opportunity to come on my podcast too, so that I could listen to him and do what I said of, you know, hearing them come on that podcast, hear what they talk about, and then try and dumb it down another layer. And to do that, like, I feel like that would maybe be my third one, of just having like the opportunity to interview the same people, that kind of caliber of people that he's having on, and to build off of their ideas of what happens in their discussion. Cause I think he's the best at it. And I don't think I would ever want to try and compete with that vein, but I feel like I could do my own thing with that, of just adding to it. And I feel like that'd be really cool to me, to know that something I love so much and I get so much out of and has really changed me as a person, I could add to that and help make that even more special than it already is. That'd be exciting to me. That'd be my 3 wishes, I think, off the top of my head. I'm probably missing some really obvious ones in there. Who knows?
Okay. So now you get to ask your audience 3 things to do for you. You've paid them 100 episodes. You've already asked them to like follow, subscribe,
right,
all that stuff. Now you've got 3 additional asks.
One thing when I start getting sponsorships on the podcast, to give that a chance and to listen to it, and if it sounds like something to, that's the best way to support a podcaster, is to the people that give the podcaster a chance by investing with them with their sponsorship dollars. If you then believe in that and you think it's a product you'd ever use, is to, you know, go buy that product and go invest in that. That's the message you're sending to them, that you believe in the podcast and the market that they're providing. So I'd say when I do get sponsors, is to go support those sponsors when I bring them up, if it applies to you. I'm not going to say go spend your money on something you don't want to. I'd never want people to do that, but so that'd be one. Honestly, one of the biggest things I always want is that people listen to the recommendations I get. Like, even if that means driving people away from my podcast to go listen to ones, you know, like I in a heartbeat wouldn't feel bad about it in a heartbeat if somebody stopped listening to me as much to go start listening to Lex Friedman, because I think he's bringing the best things to the world right now, and the world needs more Lex Friedman. I think they need Nick von Wackerbarth too, but I'm working on. There's gonna be a time when I'm as good as that and I'm bringing the same things. But at this point, he's probably bringing more and would give more, you know, value per minute listened kind of thing. Same with Joe, same with all these other people, same with Brett and Heather, same with, you know, Leanne Kreischer and Christine Pazitsky, right? Like you're where my mom's at. The lessons I've learned about pregnancy and labor and having kids and postpartum depression and stuff, like that is invaluable. Like the amount of people I've recommended that to, new mothers and all that stuff. Like I love when people take my recommendations. So maybe another ask would be, you know, just, you know, if you hear something on the podcast, go check it out. That's kind of my second ask. And then third one, just, you know, come along the journey with me, buy in, and you know, maybe it's the podcast today, but when it is, you know, business consulting and Twitch streaming and whatever comes next, because you know, I'm just getting started and there's gonna be new ventures, but knowing that of whatever I do, wherever I go, come along with me and follow that ride and support me wherever I go. And even if it's into a weird different venture, like if you're not a MMA guy, but if I go down some sort of MMA venture, but just to support me because you believe in me more than even what the venture is. I feel like that's the other thing. And that's what I do for a lot of my favorite content creators, I guess maybe is a weird way to put it, right? And I feel like that's what I'm hoping I can bring to people. So maybe that'd be my ask. I don't like asking. I think that's a great question, but I also just, it's tough for me to answer because I don't like asking anything. I feel like I already ask so much. Like just like if I could give up those 3 asks and just ask one thing, just listen to my show. And if you like it, right? Like that's all. I already get so much out of that. I feel like to ask anything more is just being greedy. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm so thankful that people listen to this, that already, like I don't know. What more can I ask of people, right? Like that's awesome.
Do you have any dream sponsors?
Oh yeah. Dream sponsors. Right now, Freshie would be great. Because that's what I eat every day. I'd be good to get free Freshie. I'd love that. Athletic Greens, right? Like, and that's one of the ones that like I'm reaching out to because I take their product every day. The UFC, that'd be cool because I feel like I'm already getting good at it, but I think in the next couple of years, I'm going to get really good at selling their product. And because I know these fighters to such a degree, like who's going to be better at telling people what fights to watch and selling a card for them? Like, I feel like if they wanted to, I could really, knock that out of the park. I think any comedy club, right? Like that's one of those ones where, like I want to, Rick Bronson's here in town or one of the other comedy clubs in Edmonton here, just a no brainer to me to sponsor podcasts. And, they have Jesse May Peluso coming or Ryan Sickler, or, any of these comedians, when Joe Rogan comes to town, people are pretty aware, but there's lots of these guys that are funny as shit. And people just need a trusted voice to tell them, well, who's funny? This like, is this somebody I should go watch, right? Like, is it a can't miss weekend at the Comedy House? For sure. Like, I feel like that would be awesome. And I'd love to do that. Even some of the regional MMA shows, like that'd be cool to get as a sponsor, like some of the more Canadian ones. What other dream sponsors? I feel like there's some. Who would your dream sponsor be that I could get on?
I'm trying to think like outside the box because like the podcast that I listen to, when I do like get caught not able to skip through ads, like the most common ones you hear are Athletic Greens, Magic Spoon, MeUndies. Yeah, but I'm trying to think like as far as like products that I use that I would be comfortable.
Yeah.
Oh man, Lululemon.
Lululemon would be a cool one. Yeah, for sure. That'd be a really cool one.
We always talk at work. We're like, if Optimize could get sponsored by Lululemon, we would be rolling because we all wear it. Yeah, Lulu would be the best one. One
it's maybe, I guess it kind of falls into dream sponsor because it's on my list and I want to call them is Royal Pizza here in Edmonton. Like, because it's my favorite pizza place, right? Like, you think I can't sell some fucking pizza? Like the way I talk about pizza and the food I love, right? Like I'm actually passionate about it. Like, so that is one that's kind of on the list and I'm hoping to reach out to, and I hope that I can be successful with it. But like that one's cool. I feel like there's got to be one that would apply to both of us that we both think is really cool. Like I'm trying to think of our shared interests, like to get like sponsored by like the Harry Potter estate.
Oh my gosh.
Like, somehow like to just sell anything Harry Potter, like Harry Potter Land, the books, the movies, like that, like that would be cool.
That'd be sick.
Yeah. What other ones would be cool?
Although apparently Harry Potter isn't cool anymore.
What?
Yeah, like it makes you old. Like that's what this next generation is saying.
I've never cared about that stuff. I guess.
Because I intend to, if I have children, they better love it.
But that's the thing of like those societal things of like what is cool and isn't cool. That is such that like it's
I know,
much
it's
to
just
do
hilarious.
About nothing. Yeah, it is. It is
because
funny.
Like it was such a like
cultural staple.
Exactly. And like we grew up in like for me anyways, like I was a very similar age to when the movies came out. So it felt like you were growing up with Harry.
Yeah.
And so I realized like that this next generation, they probably saw the movies before they read the books, if they read the books.
But I think there's certain things that are evergreen. I think Lord of the Rings, I think Harry Potter, I think there's some things, but I think because they have such cultural cachet that to hate on them now becomes cool. That's what it is. It's not anything to do with Harry Potter. It's just that there's something there. But I think the cultural impact and just it's undeniable. Like Joe Rogan always says, become undeniable. Then it doesn't matter, right? There's so many things, luck. There's all these things going into it. But if you just work really hard and become like he's usually talking about it in terms of being like a comedian, right? Like, sure, there's industry that can give you opportunities and you can grind yourself into the ground looking at others. Well, they got this opportunity. They got a half-hour special and all this. If you become undeniable and every time you walk into a comedy club, you rock the fuck, but like eventually the doors will open because you are undeniable and your talent is, right? Like that's kind of the way I look at everything. And I try to apply that to everything. Where was it going with that? What were we even talking about? Sponsors. Yeah. I don't know. I think Harry Potter's undeniable, right? Like I think it's just, it's so good on its ed. I got slipped in a little Harry Potter accent there, but like it's just so good that people will always love it and it will never not be cool. I don't know. I don't worry for a second about Harry Potter. I think it's just one of those things. I think it's like Star Wars. I think it's like any of those things. What I'm curious about is at what point does things like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, do they try and remake them?
You know what?
Have you ever thought of that?
I have, because I'm listening to that podcast that's kind of like that 27-year-old who's never read the books and then he goes through his experience with it. Which is really, so he's through now. I think that he's finished his his whole podcast journey. It was like 2017 that he started. But so he talks to like all these people, like some people who've never read it, some people who are like self-proclaimed like mega fans, like people who've been involved like in like LeakyCon and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guests bring up like how they split the last movie, or sorry,
movies.
the last book into two movies, but how they still miss so much stuff in all of the movies, and how amazing would it be
For a
to
TV
do
series?
a TV series, a limited TV series, kind of like Sherlock, where like it's like an hour and 20 minutes long every episode, but then they can actually delve into those details that get missed.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it would be hard because like now
I'm so attached to the actors and stuff.
exactly like when I imagine them, I imagine those characters. But when I went and saw The Cursed Child, you had to completely reconfigure your version of these characters because they're different actors.
Yeah.
And it didn't ruin my experience of it.
Didn't take you out of it.
No.
And that's what I'm thinking. Like, I think it will be done eventually. And I think
Have
it's
you read The
exciting.
Lord of the Rings?
No, I have not.
I'm waiting for the hold at the library, but I don't know.
I've tried to read The Hobbit a couple times and gotten about halfway through it. And I don't want to say that in a bad, like I really was enjoying the book. It's just, I've tried to, when you just try and read a book when you're just not in a place where you can read a book and it falls flat because that. I remember like, I'm really enjoying this book, getting about halfway through it a couple times, really enjoying it, but just something falls off or another book comes up and I start reading that. And, but recently I went and rewatched the movies all to make sure that I kind of understood them and could make a judgment call on what and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the storylines, the throughput of it, but so I think I would enjoy the books. I just haven't ever done it.
Yeah.
My stack of books I need to read is so high.
I bet, but now you're going to have time.
Yeah, exactly, which is exciting to me. And that's something like I was looking forward to. I was like, I'm going to read every day. And like, I've only read like 2 chapters since Friday being off. But again, just finding that time, finding that new schedule and new rituals and that. So it'll come.
Absolutely. And plus like, it's not enjoyable when you're not in the place to enjoy it. It's kind of like when you finish university and all you want to do is read a book for pleasure, but you can't turn your mind off or turn your mind on, I suppose, in that way.
Yeah.
So have you thought, what's one question you wish that I'd asked you?
I was actually thinking that as you went to the next, I was like, damn, I still haven't come up with something.
Or anything that other person interviewed you and asked that I didn't?
Yeah. Try to. Maybe what are the hardest parts of like podcasts? Like you asked like, what was like surprising about it, and I've said like, oh, it was surprising that it was so hard, but like about maybe like asking about like what the specifics of what makes it difficult, like what goes into making a podcast. That's like the hardest part. So like if I was to answer that, I'd just say like the easiest part is the recording of actually like when you set up the equipment and you hit start. The harder parts is hauling all the equipment around, making sure that it's it's the splitting of the focus away from the best part of like the recording, but all the other things that you have to think of as well that prevent you from putting your mind totally towards that, right? Which is why I'm excited to get a studio so that I don't have to take that into it. Recording intros and outros, not the funnest. It always is kind of an inconvenience, right? Like it's fun to record with somebody and you get the content down, but it's almost just, it's part of it's very job like when you're, the episode's tomorrow. I know I have this on my calendar that I need to record this intro and outro, get it offloaded, right? Mess around with the editing, make sure I have anything edited out that's not supposed to be in there and all that. Like that feels like work. Writing descriptions, not very fun. Don't really enjoy that part. Getting it uploaded and like getting it all set. And trying to find like Instagram things for the post of like, that is all stuff that I hope to one day have somebody that can do all that. Right. Like, and that will be a great day. But until then, I'm just trying to find love in it and to try and enjoy it as much as I can and to not just get caught up in the negative feedback loops of just hating it and then resenting it or whatever it is of just, no, this is the work part that allows you to do what you love. This is what pays the bills. Kind of like, this is the, things that make it possible, but those things are hard. Inviting guests is tough. Organizational, like of trying to like keep things straight of when you have guests coming on and like, and when you're going to be down in certain places like this month, now having this freedom of, I'd really had all the best intentions of, doing a week in Edmonton, a week in Slave Lake, a week in Calgary, and just recording, episodes the whole time and kind of planning that out. But this month is just flying away. I have nothing in place. Like I've done tons of episodes in Edmonton, but my Calgary trip is still kind of up in the air. Like I don't know when I'm going to have time to get down to Slave for a week and all this stuff, but and I'm just not a very organized person. I don't know if that'll surprise anybody listening, but like I'm not the most organized. So trying to force myself to be organized is a bit tough.
So what holds you back from your traveling?
Just getting it organized, I guess. Like what was holding me back before was work, right? Of not being able to just, leave for a week and go do it. And it's just about, just picking a time.
Yeah.
And then scheduling around it. And almost I'm just lazy, right? Like it just requires me of setting some time aside to pick some days and book some guests and make sure that I, organize it. And that's something I think when I go back to GP after this time down in Edmonton, that's probably what I'm going to focus on, is doing that and making sure that I have that in place so that I'm doing it. But I shouldn't be that hard on myself, because I am starting, like what I want to do, like what I'm doing this week is kind of what I wanted to do. I'm recording, 6 episodes this week. That's awesome. That's kind of what I wanted to do. So I shouldn't be too hard on myself, but I just want to be, I figured by this point I would have all that planned out and have time around that to plan out to stream and to do all these other stuff and all these other ventures. But that'll all come with time. I just got to stop being so impatient and let things happen at their own pace. I'm such a goofball because I talk about all this impatience and stuff, but then I always am such a proponent of the universe and everything happening at its own pace and stuff. But I just don't. It's one of those do as I say, not as I do things, because I definitely could learn from my own words sometimes here. Yeah, that's probably what holds me back from just the travel stuff. But I think that's all just, it's going to come with time.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that we've hit all of the questions that I had prepared.
Mm-hmm. Could I ask you a question?
You can.
What, of this process of watching me get into this podcast, what has surprised you most?
What has surprised me the most?
Or even just like, what has it been like to watch me go down this path and watch the highs and lows and to watch me suffer through some of these things and enjoy some really cool things like the Coleman brothers and stuff? Is it nerve-wracking? Is it anxiety inducing to watch me like go through that of putting myself out there? Is it like a pride thing? Like, do you feel proud of me doing it? Like, I don't know. I'm curious what it comes from with you, because I also, in starting it, one of the things I worried a lot about was, like I'm signing up for this of putting myself out there, but you aren't, dad isn't, mom isn't, like at the time Alyssa wasn't, right? And that was something that I worried about. So I am curious to ask how you guys are doing with that. Something I probably should ask Dad about yesterday. Yeah.
And I suppose, like I obviously can only speak for myself, but it's funny that you say that, because I was going to say one of the things that surprised me the most was how anxious it does make me.
Yeah.
But mostly because I don't ever want to see you sad or down. And I think that if in a lot of ways it's been nice, because I don't think that you would disagree that like usually I call you. You don't usually call me.
Yeah.
And so like it's nice because like at least I have a barometer of where you are. And even on ones when you're not doing a solo cast, I can usually pick up on where you're at, and it'll be a reminder to me to check in with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that I didn't expect to be, and I mean, I'm just thinking about Liam listening to this and laughing, because I am a very anxious person. And so like, it seems like anything could make me more anxious.
Yeah.
And I guess like, it seems like in some ways you are an extension of me, as any part of my family is.
Yeah.
And I know that I feel too much for anybody, but especially the people who I'm close with. And so to watch you put yourself out there. Yeah, it is tough sometimes.
Yeah, I bet it would be.
But obviously like, and then like you see, like you'll have those really like big highs, and that's awesome. And to see you doing what you want to do, and to see you making the moves to create the life that's going to make you the happiest is really cool.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like if I could protect you, and I hear these things that you say sometimes, and I think, oh, somebody is going to hear this and not understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Or they're going to take this the wrong way. And every time that I had pre-recorded or pre-listened to something and said, that when you say this sounds like this, and you're like, that's okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking about that for the next week. worried about it.
Yeah, I know.
Or like I will misspeak.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I was thinking about earlier in this when I said that I have a hard time believing that anybody should be denied healthcare,
Right.
For any reason. And I'm thinking, like, I know where my stance is.
Yeah,
and I know that,
but
like,
that can be twisted so many
Exactly.
ways. Yeah. Yeah.
And like, and you and I don't even necessarily agree on some of these things.
For
right?
sure. For sure.
And so-
yeah. But I know that you're a good person and that I would never look for the worst in that sentence to try and paint you in a bad light. I would give you the benefit of the doubt of trying to look at that through the best light of sure, there's probably some exceptions to what you said, but they'd be for good reasons and that you're trying to bring the most good in the world. I feel like that's where, yeah, like when you would pre-listen to some of these episodes and you say like, hey, you realize this can come across as that, and I say, yeah, I know, but I know I didn't mean that, and that's something that I have to get used to, of just being confident in who I am and who I know I am, and that people are going to try and misattribute and mischaracterize you. That's just par for the course. That's what being a public figure is, right? Especially as a podcaster, when you're saying all these things and you're going to be, putting out 10 to 15 hours of long form content a week. Like, you're going to say some dumb shit. You're going to say some things that can be misconstrued. You just have to have the confidence in yourself that I know who I am, and that the people that matter to me aren't going to do that, right? Like, the people that are listening and following this journey and that have heard me talk about other things and know that I have nothing but love in my heart and nothing but compassion for people, and that I would never hurt a fly and I would never actively cause harm to anybody physically or emotionally by my words or my actions, right? And I know that. And I feel like the people that listen and follow along and that believe in me are going to know that. And it all comes out in the wash, right? Like, when you look at Joe Rogan, he gets a hit piece a week written about him, right? Of all these things that are so far off of, I've listened to tens of thousands of hours of this guy. I know very intimately who he is and where his shortfalls are. And he's not a perfect person. He's the first to admit it. But the way they go after him is so inaccurate, right? And I know that that's eventually going to happen to me one day. And just to have that confidence that that doesn't matter. I'm confident of who I am. And I know that. And the people that matter are going to know that. But I feel like that's where I go back to the people around me, of that is easy for me to say, but those people that care, that's going to be tough for them, right? Like you and mom and dad and everyone that's close to me, of just, you want it, because I feel that too. Because when I see Joe Rogan get drugged through the mud of him being called all these things where it's so inaccurate, right? Like, that fires me out. I was like, oh, how can you do this to this person that's bringing so much good to the world, right? Like, that's tough for me because I know that, but that's not tough for Joe Rogan. But I know that, it might not be as tough for me. And I'm sure it's going to be tough for me at times, because that stuff never feels good. But I almost worry more for you guys than I do for myself in some of those in the long run. So I want to make sure that I'm checking in with you guys along the way to make sure that you guys are okay with it. And if there's anything I can do to make it better, right? Like,
yeah. And I don't want you to like ever think that we are not so happy for you and so proud of everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
But it is tough because
For
like
sure.
everybody has different levels of comfortability with exposing things.
For sure.
And for me, like, if I had my choice, like, I would never like
expose anything to anybody ever.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I would keep it all locked tight.
Yeah.
And then I think like to watch you do it is very brave, but it's also hard to wrap my mind around, because if I could, I would protect you too.
Yeah. And I get that. And that's what I get a lot from mom and dad too. Of just they want to protect you so bad. And, their recommendations all the time is, well, maybe just back it off. Like, don't say those things. Don't be who you are. It's like, that's kind of not the point, guys. Like, I kind of need, it's all or nothing. Like, yeah, I could do that, but then might as well just quit the podcast right now and go pick up a job again, because that's not what I want it to be. And yeah, it's scary. Yeah. Like, I understand it, but I made a conscious choice. Like, it's like, everybody's catching up to the impact of the decision that I made months after I already made it. But I made that before I even started. I knew all these things and I was very aware of them, and I knew what this was going to be. And I think I tried at the start to kind of have a conversation with each and every one of you, just to say like, hey, this is what I'm going down. This is going to be scary. This is going to be something that, you might not agree with everything I say, but I'm conscious of this and I'm okay with it. Can you guys be okay with it, kind of thing, right? And I know that that's a lot to ask, and it's going to be kind of something that ebbs and flows and is going to be at different stages. And that's why I'm saying, like, I think that's something where you can't just check in once and then expect, oh, well, we had that talk, 3 years ago, but it's, along the way of how you guys are feeling with it and making sure that, and it's nice that you guys are there for me even through all that, because I do value everything that you guys are giving up. Not giving up, that's not even the right way to put it, but like all that extra anxiety that gets added into your guys' life due to my choices, right? And I'm very appreciative that you guys will take that on for me and support me with what I'm doing. You guys have been so supportive, Dad for episode 100, how excited he was to get on there, and you guys all support in your own ways. And, but I know that you guys are all behind me, and it means a lot. And I've been enjoying this ride, and I'm going to keep enjoying it. And I'm just excited to find some of those, a lot of the success that doesn't mean much to me, I'm still excited about, because I feel like it's going to mean a lot to other people around me, and it's going to prove stuff to them. So almost it allows me to be excited about the things I want for the right reasons, right? Like, I think it's an easy pitfall to focus on making a lot of money with a podcast, right? So which is
most people's estimation of value,
right? Which is most people's estimation of value, and their biggest goal in life, right? Like, and their biggest goal was starting a podcast, but that's not mine, right? Like I said, like guest access is way more important to me than money, but sometimes the money a podcast makes is what's going to give you the guest access, right? And that's one good way to focus on. So that now money, I can focus on trying to make some money, but not for the right reasons type of thing. But I also have another reason to make money, because it might not mean all that much to me, but that would mean something to Dad, right? like we know that, and now I can kind of aim at it, because it's like, well, I want them to be, to have something that they can be proud of, right? Like, because I can be proud of the guest access thing, but that's not going to be the thing that makes everybody else proud, right? Everybody has different value estimations of kind of what it does, and you don't want to be doing things for anybody else than yourself. And I know that, but I already have enough. I have plenty of motivation, self-motivation for the reasons that I have, and just my passion for what it is, right? For the medium. I have that in spades. I don't ever have to worry about it, but just all these extra auxiliary motivations is just it's extra fuel, right? And I like to just look at it that way, so that I'm keeping myself looking at things the right way. I just think the way you look at things is so much more important sometimes than even your actions, or I don't know, like the way your mindset and your viewpoint is what's going to dictate your actions. So you need to really focus on that and make sure you're doing things for the right reasons, and your why is solid, and that you're checking in with yourself a lot of times to make sure you're constantly doing things for the right reasons, and not slipping into some of the pitfalls that I've seen so many people kind of fall into. And I just am trying to keep that at the forefront of my brain. Yeah. Is that all your questions, Court? I
think that's all of them. I think the only one that I didn't ask was, what are your dream guests? But I feel like you pretty much listed them without me even asking.
And that would be such a long question. Like I said, I have a whole spreadsheet of dream guests, and I don't even like calling them dream guests. It's almost just like future guests. Like, because I have that confidence, I'm going to have them on, right? Fitting it in dream almost makes it less further away than where it is already in my mind, of how close I think they are, of maybe not close in terms of time frame, because it might take a while, but like close in terms of like achievability, right? Like I think it's a lot more achievable than even I think, and probably than what other people think, for sure, because I'm pretty confident. So
right.
Yeah.
I think that we hit all of the ones that I thought of. Any other ones that you wanted to touch on? No,
I think that's everything. I think that's a really good recap of what the first 100 episodes have been, and kind of where I'm at with all that change. Like you kind of started the episode with, of just kind of documenting a good waypoint along the way. And I'm excited maybe do this after 200 episodes, maybe 300 episodes, and we'll see how that goes. Yeah. And now that Ingo's been on, it'll be fun to get you and Ingo on at the same time, tell some stories. What?
I just can't imagine. Dad, well, think about like every family gathering we have. I get talked over all the time. I get interrupted. And so I'm just imagining Dad, and Dad would just spend the whole time roasting me.
Well, I'll keep him honest.
Because as soon as he has an audience, he just gets very excited.
A little bit. But I think also, I know that too. So if he started doing that, I think me and you would gang up on him too.
That's true.
You know what I mean? I'm like, come on, Ingo, be better.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I think that was it was fun to do episode 100 with him, but almost what I was more excited for was just to get it out of the way so that I could have him on more, because it was like, I wanted to have him on before 100. Like,
Yeah.
I had good reasons for waiting for 100, but like now that it's done, it's gonna be fun to just whenever, or, you know, because he's so excited about it too. It's just fun to do it every once in a while, and you know, maybe get like him and Steve on one time or something, let those two idiots, or him and Barry or something.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's going to be pretty fun.
Nice.
Just the possibilities are endless, and that's what's so exciting about this. Is there's every day I'm coming up with new ideas that are going to be fun, and I don't think that'll ever slow down. I think, you know, I'm going to be 40 something sitting here. Oh, I can have this or something. That's going to be exciting and stuff. So yeah, no, but once again, I think this was a great idea. Thanks for putting the work in to come up with questions, giving me your time. I know you're busy. You have to change your day around to do this with me, and I appreciate that, because I'm going to the hockey game tonight. Let's go. Haven't been to an Oilers game in forever. I'm excited. And that was lots of fun. And we'll have to have you back on as just a regular guest so I can catch up on everything you've been through. Last time you were on was the wedding episode, but before that, it's probably a while, hey?
Yeah. No, I think episode 3.
You haven't been on? No, we did one in between that.
I don't think so.
I think we did, Court. I could almost swear it. An online one, a Zoom.
Yeah, that does ring a bell.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember it at all.
That's all right. I don't remember any of them. Oh, that's funny. All right. Well, thank you so much, Court. We'll talk soon. We'll have you back on the podcast soon.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. See you.
Bye.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. If you did, or if you didn't, really, I mean, either way, I'd love it. But if you don't want to, no worries. Please pass it on to a friend if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe on whatever podcast app you listen on. Please follow the social medias. Please send any guest ideas you have my way. Any feedback, any reviews. Love to hear it. Love to hear from people. Got some really great messages these last couple of weeks, and it's really fired me up to take it to the next level and make sure I keep bringing that same level of enjoyment to you guys. Every episode, I'm hoping to bring more than one episode a week, almost, pretty consistently here. Got a couple ideas to start some, side podcasts to go with it. And I'm super excited for everything coming in the future. So just once again, thank you guys so much for your support. Can't do this without you guys that listen. And all that jazz. Other than that, have a great week, great weekend, great next week. Have a great life. Kick ass. Tell people you love them, because I love you. And all right. See you on the next one. Bye.